Hey there, real quick before the video begins, I just wanted to let you know this series is actually a supercut of a series that I did, I think in like September to December of 2023, so if you're interested in playing with the mod list, maybe don't be so interested because it's probably not going to work. I hope you enjoy though, and yeah, here we go. Hello and welcome my friends. Today I have a very special video for you all. We are going to be creating the Continental Army of the United States in RimWorld. Not only creating them, but we are also going to be surviving, nay, thriving with them. But real quick, before the video begins, I make videos like this all the time. So if you like it, be sure to like, subscribe, stick around, you're gonna love it. And you're gonna love your daddy rat before it's all over with. But now, with all that being said, let us dive right in. First things first, we're starting out with our main man named Henry. Henry here is going to be the leader of our Continental Army. He's what you might call a true red-blooded American. But of course he can't do it on his own, so we are going to give him his army. These brave men have volunteered to die in our, fight for their freedom with us. So we are now an army of 45 men strong. It doesn't seem like much, but of course in RimWorld, 45 is a pretty good size raid. Now with that being said, I do love our beautiful and handsomely dressed soldiers. However, we are going to be capturing enemies and recruiting them as militia members, growing our forces to exponential levels to try and defeat the other powers of the planet while also trying not to starve to death. Speaking of the other powers upon the planet, there are quite a few of them, of course. Some of the most notable, of course, are the Prussians, the British, and the French, and there are also quite a few tribes as well. And a quick disclaimer as well, because I'm not going to be doing things historically accurate, I'm just here to have some fun. So if you want to see something like that, too bad. Anyhow though, I basically just copied Commander Henry here and duplicated him many times for our soldiers, so their stats are all exactly the same. And now before any of you say, oh, they're incapable of intellectual because they're Americans, I didn't do that on purpose, and you're really starting to hurt my feelings. Anyhow though, you'll also notice that their uniforms are actually Prussian, not American or anything like that, and that's because I couldn't find anything on the workshop to use here. But I don't know, I thought the uniforms looked similar enough, I guess. First things first though, we're going to need to claim this land for ourselves, and the only real way to go about doing that is by planting our glorious flag. Smells like freedom, baby. You may feel the need to point out that my flag design only has 8 stars on it. Oh, I would hate you so much. Obviously, I'm joking. I love you all ever so much, almost as much as I love building some wonderful cabins and fortresses. But you know what we need for that? Wood. Well, I suppose it's a great thing that our soldiers are already working diligently on getting plenty of that for us. They're also working on gathering up all the berries on the map so we don't starve to death in the first 2 days. Now we're also using the Dub's Bad Hygiene mod, meaning that we're going to need a place to poo. So we began working on a small latrine. But of course there won't be any poo if we don't eat any meals, so we began building campfires to cook our berries on. Roasted berries, just like Ma used to make back home. With our first day coming to a close, might I just say that it has been mighty successful as well. We have plenty of berries to munch on for the next few days, and just as well we have plenty of wood to begin our fortress. But now, my friends, it's time for us to rest our weary heads underneath the beautiful American stars. Alright, that's enough of that. Let's get our asses back to work. The very next day, we began bright and early working on our beautiful fortress walls to make sure that we're basically safe inside, and that the filthy British and French and Prussians can't just wander right in anytime they want. With day 2 though, we would also begin trying to prepare for our hunger. Berries weren't going to last us for very long, and other crops are going to take quite a while to grow, so the only other option is wildlife. Another pressing concern for us, of course, was the hygiene of our soldiers though, so we began building a well just on the outside of our camp so we could wash our smelly arses. With that completed, we would then add on to our latrine and build a bit of a bathhouse so the men could get all soapy and wet together. Knock it off, you bunch of freaks, I'm just talking about bathing. As day 2 came to a close, we would get a good gander at all the animals that we had killed and all the meat that we would be able to eat in the next few days. Sometime later, we would then begin construction on massive barracks for all of our soldiers to sleep safe and sound inside, away from any dastardly foreign powers. Now by this point, as you could imagine, imagine, our men got tired of digging the sewage out of our latrines, so we began building some wooden piping down to the river. We would also begin heavily focusing on beautifying our barracks. Now, I know that may seem a little bit silly, but we're building some wood flooring with a beauty of one, and the reasoning behind that is because the men continued having mental breaks because of their disgusting barracks and having to eat raw food and stuff like that. As one might imagine, these were not exactly the happiest conditions to be living in, but we were trying our damnedest to make it at least slightly better. And then, out of nowhere, those filthy, tea-drinking British showed their ugly mugs. I'm joking, I'm sure you're all extremely beautiful. Anyhow, though, they were planning an attack on us, so obviously, though, we would attack them preemptively as we outnumbered them tenfold. We marched our troops across the river, just like George Washington that one time. We crept up upon the British and got close enough that we could see the whites of their eyes, and that's how we knew it was time to fire. We all stood shoulder to shoulder. The only thing between us was the smoke from our muskets. Oh, how I wish I could tell you the British put up a good fight. But if I told you that, I would be lying to you, because we put the absolute smackdown upon them. I mean, we outnumbered them by a shit ton, so it was kind of inevitable. I checked the skills on one of the British soldiers, and she wasn't totally useless, so we decided that we would kidnap her, lock her in this room, and recruit her to be the first member of our militia. But that'll take quite a while to do, and in the meantime, we have plenty of wounded to tend to. Now, in this day and age, a scratch is basically a death sentence, so we need to make sure no one gets infections. We would also begin focusing on our crops, which is something, truthfully, we should have done already, but the raid caused a little bit of a disturbance, so we were a little behind on. Something else that we were also very behind on was recreation. These poor, strapping lads were bored out of their noggins, and they had nothing to do, so we decided to build them all some chess tables to keep their minds sharp. Once all that was completed, we also began working on plenty of shelves for our warehouse. As we had so much wood and nothing to really use it on, we decided to use it for more places to store wood, naturally. And finally, last but not least, we were able to begin working on some tables and chairs for all of our soldiers to eat at, and that would help us out with that silly little debuff of eating without a table. Because by God, if your colony does not have enough tables and chairs for everyone to eat at, it's basically gone. I should suppose, though, that we should just be thankful that we have as much food as we do, that we're actually able to sustain ourselves. I'm quite surprised that we have enough wildlife in the area to hunt. Speaking of which, look at this little fella. Oh, hi, little buddy. Look how cute. Ooh, let's tame him. Oh, not a high enough skill. You don't want to be our friend, huh? That's okay, I don't mind. You little bastard, you think you're too good for me? Get back here, you slippery little freak. Yes, run, you disgusting little amphibian. I will catch you. Taking a little snooze, are we? Yes. Rest your eyes, my little friend. Hey-ya! Oh God. Oh God, what have I done? Oh God, I'm nervous. What have I done? Hey, wait a minute, was I doing? Oh yeah, the video, my bad. Yeah, so anyways, we had plenty of delicious little critters to eat and stuff our little patriotic tummies full of them, and that would keep us for a good little while until the rice was grown. Now with that being said, we're going to need a proper place to actually store all of our food, and that way we can also have a proper place to cook it and butcher and blah 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 blah. You get the point. So as you can see with your eyeballs, we built one. Was it perfect? No, not really, but it was pretty damn good considering. And at the very least with this structure, we'd be able to keep all of our meat and rice out of the rain and prevent mold from growing on it. We would also end up building some camp cauldrons in front of the doorways for easy access. I'm not really sure on the difference between those and campfires, except these look a lot better. And with that finished, we could finally enjoy some amazing bullfrog legs and berry stew or whatever in God's name we've concocted, and do it in good company as well. Nothing like a good meal with your good friends. I hope we don't all get dysentery. Whoa, what the hell are you doing? Are you watching him take a bath? You're disgusting! Your mother is going to be very disappointed in you. I'm joking, of course. She couldn't be any more disappointed in you already. How's it hanging, folks? It's your Rat Daddy here, and today I bring you episode 2 of our RimWorld Continental Army series. You guys really seem to enjoy the very first episode, so I figured, what the hell, let's make it into a series. Now, one of the first big issues that we're going to be tackling today is hunger. With an army of this size, starvation is not only possible, but it is inevitable. If we don't get our lazy asses out there and start hunting some wild game, that is. These animals will feed our hungry tummies. Let's see, deer, squirrels, yes. What's this? Oh, it's a little bullfrog. That's pretty cool, I guess. The local wildlife of this territory wouldn't know what hit them when the old red, white, and blue came out muskets blazing. Actually, they did, because these muskets were smoothbore, and so we took about 6 or 7 shots before we actually hit them. We would then heavily focus on our defenses because massive raids are inevitable as well. Even as we speak, the powers that be on this planet are plotting our demise second by second, and we would need to be ready when they come. But being able to properly protect ourselves means we're going to need plenty of resources like steel. So we decided to mine out a whole heaping shit ton of it, and then we immediately built a whole bunch of shitters right on top of it. It seemed like a fitting place for all of our new latrines. We then began working on some packed dirt around the entrance of our base to ensure that vegetation doesn't become an issue during battle. And then we would begin working on some metal death machines. That's right, baby. We made cannons. We ended up only building 4 of them. For now, we may end up adding some additional, or we may research better cannon technology before doing so. But regardless, as for now, we're going to need some ammunition for these fine cannons, so we began working on some cannonballs, just the standard issue ones for now. We're not gonna get too fancy. Luckily, the standard cannonball was fairly cheap and easy to make, so we started crafting a whole heaping ton of them, but then we ended up having some more visitors. It was the French. Oh, mon ami, and it would appear that they were here to trade with us. There's nothing we love more than buying some goods from our French allies, except maybe buying some land from them. Oh, but regardless of actual history, what's going on right now is we bought plenty of fuel from the French, that way we can make some flaming cannon rounds. These rounds, of course, would not only shred the limbs of our enemies, but they will also light them on fire, which is a nice touch. But speaking of our enemies, how are they going to come across the river so easily to be defeated by us if they don't have any bridges? So we began working on them. Just as well, of course, we would also like to walk across them, because apparently our men are too good to wade through the alligator-infested waters. Oh, boo-hoo. Oh, shit. It would appear that we have a raid from tribes people. I'm sure it's nothing we can't. Oh, that's a lot of tribes people. Well, our boys in blue are going to give them hell regardless. If we die here at Rats Valley, so be it. At least we'll die free American men. The tribespeople immediately began booking it towards the entrance of our fortress, and our men immediately began giving them hell with their muskets. Credit where credit is due, the tribespeople fought fiercely, and they were very brave. They just couldn't handle a massive cannonball hitting them in the sternum. But what they lacked in cannonball resilience, they made up for in sheer numbers, as well as balls. Balls of steel, or bronze, one might even say. Except for the ladies, they didn't have any balls. But by God Almighty, they fought like they did. As the tribespeople continued their massive push towards the entrance of our fortress, we were actually forced to make a strategic retreat. If they wanted to kill us, they would have to kill us inside our own home, where we had the advantage. They busted our walls wide open and began flooding into our base. Luckily for us, though, not only were we in here with our men, but the French were here as well, and they were helping us defend ourselves. And thankfully, with the help of our allies, we had managed to kill enough of the tribespeople that they began to flee. We had finally done it. We had fought off the largest raid yet, but there would be much larger and many more to come, I'm sure. Unfortunately, though, as they fled, they would kidnap a few of our men along the way. Unfortunately, we would not be fast enough to stop them from stealing our brethren. Just as well, we had also lost a soldier or two during the battle itself as well. But their sacrifices would not be in vain. But the sacrifices of the tribespeople would go in vain. For what had they even accomplished here today? They got the majority of their forces butchered, and yet they gained no footing in our fortress or in our territory. Okay, sure, they kidnapped a few of our men and killed a few more of them, but we killed way more of them, and we're also going to kidnap a few of their people to try and recruit them. So I suppose you could say that we're even Steven, as it were. From the entire raiding force, there were only 2 people that we could actually take captive because, well, everyone else was pretty much dead. That was quite alright, though we would train them to be the best damn fighters they could be. They would equal 10 men. The remaining tribal soldiers that lie on the ground, injured, begging for help, well, we kind of executed them. Okay, look, I know that sounds kind of bad, but for God's sake, it's the 18th century. Nobody cares. We're all ruthless, horrible people that are going to die when we turn 40. Kinda like the 21st century. But with the cleanup of the battle somewhat completed, it was time for us to bury our dead. God rest ye, merry gentlemen, for ye will be remembered as American heroes. And I must say, one of my favorite things about having a massive army of pawns like this is when you have a massive battle or anything like that and it needs done, any building or cleanup or anything, it does not take very long for them to get that done. But I also must say that one of my least favorite thing about having this many pawns is how often they're having mental breaks or on the verge of having mental breaks. Although that became the least of our concerns when I realized one of our soldiers named Delmain had an infection in his torso. It would appear that the poor fool had been hit directly in the chest by a shit-covered arrow from one of the tribespeople. Damn those tribespeople and their feces-covered weaponry. Those bloody geniuses. Speaking of which, one of our tribal prisoners named Beardy got a bit of a wild hair and tried to escape his makeshift prison. Needless to say that he won't be doing that ever again. After shooting him down, we scooped him up out of the blood and the dirt, we tossed him back into his beautiful little cell. And with the immediate threat neutralized for the moment, we decided to begin digging out a massive section of the hill. Now you may be asking yourself, Rat Knight, what could you possibly be wanting to build within this hill? Well, my friends, I plan on building the most beautiful, the most luxuriously wonderful bathhouse this side of the Mississippi. Our men have worked their asses off. They've worked them off so hard that they're extremely smelly and sweaty, and we don't have enough bathtubs to keep them all washed, which is also one of the leading causes of all the mental breaks that they're experiencing. We would also build a large, luxurious cottage chimney to keep the place nice and warm. I like to imagine it as a bathhouse slash sauna kind of thing. And our men seemed to feel the same way. They wasted no time rushing in and stripping down stark naked with each other. Oh boys, dear God, please do behave, you little rascals. Sometime later, our men discovered a wild, angry animal that we had never seen in these lands before. Regardless of what it was though, we would shoot it down and then take it back home to butcher it. Back home, we had also decided that it was probably about high time we started on some stone production, so we were building some pallets to store all the stone on, and we also built a stone cutting table. Our men would also begin working diligently on making this place a better home for themselves, and we began doing so by improving on the barracks. We began building each soldier a dresser, an end table, and some rugs in their rooms. It wasn't exactly perfect, but it was a little bit better. And just when I thought the good news wouldn't stop, we ended up recruiting one of the tribespeople named Kanzaki. Kanzaki here would actually be the very first member of our militia. We weren't going to force her to wear any certain uniform or equip any type of weapon. Being in the militia, as long as she fights alongside us, we don't really care. However, we had so many of the Brown Bess muskets, it was kind of a no-brainer. And just like that, folks, we had our very first militiaman, the first of many to come, of course we do hope. There are plenty of enemies out there for us to recruit, and we have plenty of prisoners in ourselves currently as well, so we should have plenty of opportunities to make more militiamen. Because if there's one thing we Americans love, it's opportunities, and second chances are always the best opportunities. An opportunity to redeem oneself. Now with all the hippy-dippy, lovey-dovey shit out of the way, though, it's time for us to begin expanding our fortress west. We would begin building our base out a little bit further near this small lake. We would of course begin sucking up more land as we went along, and the reason we're doing that is to free up more farming space to feed our ever-growing army. Because when winter comes along, we're going to have quite a bit less wildlife in the area, and that's not going to be a sustainable food source. So of course we're going to ensure that we put enough vegetables and whatnot back for winter, but also we began building some fishing piers as well. This will put fish in our bellies, and to the best of my knowledge, you can also do this during the winter time as well. And I mean, come on, look how happy he looks out there on that pier fishing. Oh, well, it appears he didn't catch anything. That's alright, Slugger, we'll get him next time. Hi there, how's it hanging? It's your Rat Daddy here, back with episode 3 of our Continental Army series. Look, I'm not gonna lie to you, today's tale is gonna be a patriotic, action-packed, ass-kicking adventure, and I hope you're ready. We're going to be starting off fairly simple today by working on our roads around our fortification. Now this may seem a little bit silly at first, but ensuring mobility around our territory is also going to help us ensure that we can appropriately protect said territory as well. But while working on our road network, I noticed that someone forgot to get the eggs out of the box in time, and now we have a bunch of little chicken babies. Oh, look how precious. I could just eat them right up. And so I did. That's right, I'm a bad guy. We murdered those precious little baby chickens and we ate them. And I'd do it again too. I'm a sicko, baby. No, but it actually was quite sad because we killed them in front of their parents, but the parents didn't really seem to mind. Ah, the beauty of Mother Nature at work. Disgusting. Then we decided that it was time we stopped living in the damn Stone Age. All these torches, what are we, some type of medieval peasantry? No, we're not. So we decided to build some beautiful street lamps all around our glorious fortress. And I'll say that they do look pretty darn spiffy. And would you look at that? The Lord has answered our prayers for some pack animals. We had 2 donkeys end up joining us. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And these 2 donkeys would be perfect for when we're out gallivanting around in caravans. And of course, we can always breed them. But now we have a massive, and I mean absolutely massive, smorgasbord of orange goodness. Okay, look, that might have been a little bit dramatic, but we do have several of our growing zones that are just chock full of these massive pumpkins ready to be eaten, which is a massive step up from all the rice, berries, and wildlife that we've been only eating up until this point. These pumpkins would be perfect for getting us through the winter, but such beautiful pumpkins require a much more beautiful food storage area, and just as well, our men truly do deserve some better cooking tools. So we spruced up the place just a teeny tiny bit and actually built them in some proper cooking tables. After that, for a brief period of time, we would begin focusing fairly heavily on our defenses. Now, we're not building any more cannons or anything like that yet. We are currently just working on plenty of spike traps in the areas that we know enemies are going to be walking through. And then I realized we were running a bit low on storage room in our storage facility, and it seems to be due to all of the weapons and whatnot that we've collected through the past raids that have happened so far. I thought to myself, who would like to buy all these weapons? Ah, yes, our good friends, the French. So we decided to send a caravan out to trade with them, but before we even arrived at the French settlement, we had a group of tribespeople who were willing to trade with us, so we sold them to them. And by them, I'm referring to all the bows, muskets, swords, etc., that we had. Sometime later, though, after returning home, I thought, what would be the most American thing we can do? And then it came to me, we could exterminate all of these bison, just like in real life. Although, unlike in real life, we're actually only killing this entire herd of bison for food. Not because they're getting in the way of our railroads, or because they're a massive food source for anyone else on the continent, or, you know, anything like that. Not only would they be a perfect food source for us for a temporary amount of time, but they would also be wonderful because all of their skin is going to make some wonderful attire for us. But if you'll excuse me, our French allies have once again come to trade their beautiful and wonderful goods with us. Ah, damn it, it's the British. Can't they see that we're trying to mingle with the French? The British raiding force engaged in an attack against the French caravan just on the outskirts of our territory. Unfortunately, because of the massive size of the raiding caravan, the French ended up being defeated. However, we would avenge our French allies, and we would not suffer the same fate. Shoulder to shoulder, muskets in hand, we would make our stand here today. We had defeated them in battle once before. We could damn sure do it again. With the British musket balls crashing down upon us, many of our men were becoming very injured, so we began to make a retreat within the base, hoping that the British would try and come through our defenses and we could ambush them. However, after doing so, when we turned around to look, it appeared that the British forces were actually fleeing the territory. It would appear that our traps came in clutch. We ended up stripping one of the British bannermen, took his flag holster from him, and we put Old Glory on there. Now, when our bannermen marched into battle, you would see the old red, white, and blue coming for you. It would take quite a bit of time. For a while, though, we ended up just hauling in all the weapons and whatnot that the British and French had dropped, as well as just cleaning up the battlefield. But then, you know, I said to myself, we have really done quite the disgrace to to our beautiful flag by only giving it 8 stars. This is really a horrible, simplified version. So I fixed it. Yeah, I know, we still don't have 13 stars, and we definitely don't have 13 stripes, but it looks more realistic, I guess. I mean, come on, who actually remembers that Georgia was one of the 13 original colonies? Not me, that's for sure. Sometime later, though, we would finally recruit Eva. Eva was the first British soldier that we actually took in to recruit as a militiaman in episode 1. So to thank her for her commitment to the Continental Army, we decided to make her some beautiful clothing. And because without clothing, when winter comes, she would freeze to death, but that's beside the point. Our militia grows stronger every day. They may be few in number, but as those numbers increase steadily over time, at some point we will have a massive militia force. However, if we keep losing a bunch of men during these raids, it's hardly going to matter, so we need to fortify our base. And I have the perfect thing: stone. Yes, you know it, you love it, stone. We are going to be fortifying the outside walls of our base with slate, marble, and really just any other stone that we can get our little hands on. We also decided that we would begin a small expansion out eastward with our fortification. That way we could claim some more land. Now, we're not actually going to be farming out east. This would actually be an area that we would end up building a great dining hall for all of our soldiers. For one, it sure as shit beats eating outside because they're constantly having mental breaks because of shit like that and how dirty the environment is outside. But two, also, it's going to be a very beautiful dining hall, which just in turn is going to increase their mood. And three, I don't know, because Daddy said so, damn it. Anyhow, though, all this fortification improvement kind of made me realize that, you know, our prisoners really have a shitty living condition, so we should try to make it less shitty so they're more willing to join us. So we began improving upon their cells. There we are, much more beautiful. I mean, they at least have a wash tub now. Sure, they still have to shit in a box, but so do the rest of us. Wait a minute, do you smell that? No, it's not the shitty latrine. I smell a spy among us, a traitor of sorts. Yes, there's the culprit. You thought we wouldn't find you, eh? Oh, we always know when you're here. Your filthy stench is unmatched. Gentlemen, I hereby request that you give your enemies no quarter. Kill him. Yes, yet another traitorous bullfrog out of our midst. Finally, the camp is truly safe. For another night, that is. Sometime later, though, we would end up working on a taxidermy bench. Now, we always have these animals that we're hunting, and we get so many gorgeous heads from them, but no way to mount them on our walls. And that, my friends, is where the taxidermy bench comes into play. Allow me to demonstrate. See these wonderful bucks that we're chopping up? We're going to take its head, and, well, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. We're going to put it on a piece of wood, as you do with animal heads, of course. Very natural thing to do, and now we're going to put it on our wall. It is quite literally as simple as that. This is an easy way to spruce up any colonist bedroom just as well. A beautiful dining hall such as the one that we've built for our colonists. But you know what? Would we really be the United States if we didn't have somewhere to put all of our incarcerated people? No. The answer is no, we would not, so we began building a beautiful prison to keep some prisoners in. And I truly do mean beautiful, because this prison was much more gorgeous as well as comfortable than the current jail cells our prisoners are in. Which in turn, of course, is going to make our prisoners want to join us even more than they currently already do. Hi there, and welcome back. I'm so glad you could make it. We were really beginning to miss you here at Rats Valley, the one and only American colony currently. To start us off today, I decided to begin building a luxurious research building. As it stands currently, we Americans are a bit behind the rest of the world, and I'm not talking about the metric system, the devil's measurements. No, I am simply talking about cannons and mortar technology, things like that, in this imaginary RimWorld that we've created. We currently know nothing other than the basic foundational research for cannons, so we're going to begin working on arced ballistics. After researching arced ballistics, we are going to have a cohorn, fortress mortar, and mortars available to be built, which are going to be absolutely perfect for defending our fortress. Now, you observant viewers out there might remember in episode 1, I said our Continental Army was incapable of intellectual, thus they could not research, so we actually have our militiamen doing it. I bet you thought you outsmarted the rat, didn't you? Impossible! Anyhow though, we began working on reinforcing our western walls. You know, we've been working on defending the fort a lot though, but we really haven't been focusing on the upcoming winter. So we decided that we would actually begin creating some boots as well as some hand wrappings for our soldiers so that they don't freeze to death. Trust me, we don't want to end up like the actual Continental Army during some winters. Preferably, we don't lose any of our troops this winter, so we're going to create an excess amount of these items. We shall ensure that every man, woman, and child, mostly just men because we barely have any women and we actually don't have any children, come to think of it. Anyhow though, we want to ensure that nobody gets frostbite on their little pickies. Or God forbid their fingers, how would they fire a musket? Uh-oh. Well, that is just a teeny tiny bit problematic. It looks like our soldier Hio is being hunted by a grizzly bear. Lucky for us though, his fingers have yet to be taken by frostbite, and thus he's still a fairly good shot. As are his comrades Patroclus and Mike. And the three of them together ravaged that grizzly bear. That poor, dumb, stupid, ugly, furry bastard had no idea what he got himself into. We're Americans, for God's sake. We could stomp the shit out of any animal and then go sleep nice and comfy in our beds without a worry in the world. Ah, it sure is nice to be free. You know who else likes to be free? Our good friend Beardy here. After several conversations and a few good beatings, he decided to join us just like that. What a sweet young lad. He of course would make a fine addition among the ranks of our glorious militiamen, or as I like to call them, cannon fodder. No, I'm serious. Well, regardless of how much we value human life, he would be one hell of a fighter, just as well as our other militiamen. Beardy was just as good as anyone to stand up for the good old US of A, against all enemies, whether foreign or domestic. Some time later, I went to add some new production areas, however, our warehouse was already crammed to the brim with all kinds of different shit. So I decided to build a much smaller building solely for certain types of production. This building specifically would be for types of art like taxidermy and sculptures. And then I discovered a hunting work site not too far from our base, and I thought to myself, this would be perfect if we went in, killed the inhabitants, and took all of their wild game for winter. I was so damn excited about this, I nearly blacked out before I sent the caravan off. However, I do want to talk about something serious for just one moment. It was somewhat brought to my attention in the comment section on our second video of this series that some people seem to believe that I am actually talking about real tribes that exist and existed in real life throughout this series. But of course, obviously that could not be further from the truth. I'm not trying to actually mock any historical events or tragedies that certain tribes and groups of people went through in actual history at all. I'm not trying to do that. Though I can obviously see why some people may feel that that's what I intended or, you know, stuff like that, but I promise you that is not it. In my mind, of course, this was simply just normal RimWorld tribes, and then I threw in some of the Napoleonic factions. I mean, that's all it is. These are standard RimWorld tribes that are randomly generated. And of course, I removed the other randomly generated factions because they don't have a tech level beneath Napoleonic factions or at the same level. So it just kind of worked out that way. So let's just get that straight real quick. But now with all that dumb shit out of the way, let us continue our crusade against this hunting worksite. Our mouths were watering at the thought of what type of juicy, delicious wildlife they had within. Could it be bison? Venison? Could it be beavers? Could it even be bullfrog? Well, I suppose it could be, but there's only one way to find out. If we want to find out what type of tasty deliciousness is in the center of this nut, we're going to have to crack it open. And so we did, along with the skulls of the people hunting here. Unfortunately, though, this delicious bounty would not come free, because freedom doesn't come free. Look, I'm running out of patriotic slogans and whatnot here, but we lost one of our men, damn it. And unfortunately, several others would be very injured, which in itself, of course, would not kill them, but there was always the risk of infection. I suppose with the threat neutralized though, we should at least see what it was that we fought so hard for at this hunting worksite. Dear God, is that? No, it can't be. Oh, mama. I would trade 10,000 men for a few dead bullfrogs. Oh, we can't wait to eat their delectable little legs. Alright, well, now that that weird shit's over with, it's time for us to head back home. And so we did. We began the long trek all the way back to Rats Valley. But of course, it is indeed a long trek, so in the meantime, we have some other things going on. It would appear that we recruited our prisoner known as Muscles. As his name suggests, he was indeed a strapping young lad. He looks like someone fed a starving mule protein powder for 6 months and then slapped it right on its tuchus. We also gave him a beautiful and vibrant feathered hat to match his beautiful vibrant tuchus. But Muscles' sweet arse wasn't the only beautiful thing around here. We were making plenty of wooden sculptures to put in all the soldiers' rooms, as well as our great dining hall and our production warehouses, which in turn should beautify those buildings, helping boost morale and also lower the chance of mental breaks. Sometime later though, our caravan had finally returned home with the enormous stockpile of bullfrog. It was a beautiful sight seeing our gorgeous Old Glory waving in the wind as they approached, and the smell of raw frog meat in the air as they approached the camp. Unfortunately though, there was also another smell in the air, the rotting carcass from our fallen brother. It was time for us to lay him to rest, just outside the pumpkin patch, where his body and his soul will no doubt nurture our beautiful orange pumpkins, and we could finally have a funeral to grieve for him and just kind of move on, so we can hurry up and kill the British and kill everyone else and take all their shit. I mean, very sad. Very sad, yes. Then we began mining out a section of the hill to get massive amounts of steel. And I know what you're thinking, no, this time around I'm not going to be building a bathhouse. This steel is actually going to be used for weapons. That is correct. We had finally researched arced ballistics and maybe a few other things I can't really remember, to be honest with you, but we began building some mortars. We also decided to let Moss, our soldier, test the very first shot out of one of the mortars to see how well it does. After firing the first shot, we realized that it was great at being extremely inaccurate, unfortunately, but I don't know, it's the best we could do. Now, these fortress mortars were absolutely massive, and they had a massive reach across the territory, which was great. However, they did have a minimum range, so we had to build some smaller mortars next to them. That way we could ensure we could fire mortar shells just outside our walls. Because otherwise, if the enemy's hugging our walls, we won't be able to hit them. Now, speaking of walls, we did once again decide to expand our eastern walls. I know, expansion throughout this episode has been very slow and steady. We are taking very small pieces of land one at a time. Realistically though, we're just kind of taking up more land as needed when we start running out of room. During this time, our soldier Fish flew into a murderous rage and decided to kill our soldier Drago for whatever reason. Unfortunately for Fish though, Drago had backup, and the two men would absolutely poke the dog shit out of him with their swords until he hit the ground. However, they were nice enough to carry him all the way back to his bunk. After the imminent threat of friendly fire was no longer an issue within our ranks, we continued our glorious work tearing down our old walls to put up something new. This time around, we would actually build our donkeys a beautiful, gorgeous, sweet and sexy pen to stay in. And of course, as we breed them, this will give us plenty of room for any future donkeys as well. Unfortunately though, the little kerfuffle between our soldiers would come back to bite us in the ass, as Fish now has an infection in his right leg. Of course, we immediately sent someone to try and tend to him, but unfortunately, after tending to his right leg, he also ended up getting a minor infection in his torso as well, which is not very preferable as we can't cut his torso off if we have to. Thankfully though, he was developing immunity very quickly. Ah yes, yet another beautiful morning here at Rats Valley, the one true American colony. The only American colony as it stands. I'm sure you're asking yourself, Rat Knight, why are these strapping, handsome lads shooting at a bunch of barrels? Well, my friends, these beautiful, hard-working American soldiers are preparing themselves. What are they preparing themselves for? Well, today, my friends, we are finally going to do it. We are going to begin raiding British settlements. So buckle up, sweetheart, because it's going to be one wild ride. But real fast, before we go out murdering a bunch of settlers and taking their lands and their goods and all that wonderful stuff, we have some matters to attend to. We have some crops that we would actually like to begin planting today. One of the most notable, of course, is going to be coffee. Now, you may think I'm just doing this because British tea, American coffee, or some shit like that, but that's actually not why. Okay, maybe that's kind of why, but also the coffee, once we actually process it and we're able to drink it, it will actually make our movement speed, manipulation, and things like that much better. So we have finally planted a fair-sized little field of coffee plants, and at 200% growth rate, it shouldn't take very long at all, but we're going to begin moving on because we have a lot to do today, baby. I also noticed that we're struggling to keep up with our demand for pelt boots as well as pelt hand wrappings because we really just don't have enough material at this time. But with winter right around the corner, our lack of leathers and cloth and things like that are going to be a big issue because we're going to freeze without these hand wrappings and boots. So what is the most American thing we can do when we don't have something? No, not take it by force, although that is a very, very good guess. We're going to make it ourselves. Since we already had a field of pumpkins that was ripe for the harvest, we began collecting them, and then we would begin planting cotton in their place. That way we can have cloth, and that will help us with our production of hand wrappings and boots. But even so, the cotton is going to take quite a while to grow, so we're going to begin hunting some animals for that sweet, sweet leather. Get out of here, you disgusting bullfrogs! Some of the wildlife, like these beautiful rhinoceri here, were not too keen on being killed and used for their meat and leather, unfortunately. Luckily though, I did not give one single shit! So long, stinky horn boy! We continued our mass slaughter of the, hunting of the rhinoceri, up until we had killed every single last one, and they were perfect because they had so much meat and leather for us. Now granted, of course, their leather wasn't exactly perfect for keeping our hands nice and warm during winter, but I don't know, you saw how they looked at us, we had to slaughter them. Besides, it wasn't like we were going to waste the meat or anything, we even used the heads for decoration around our bunks and dining halls and other structures. For this particular rhinoceros though, we would give it to our general, our commander, Henry. I actually don't know what rank Henry holds here in the army, I just think of him as kind of a leader figure, that's about it. Some time later though, we would begin building some very small and portable mortars around each side of our fortification. This would help us ensure that the western and eastern wings of our fortress were well protected. Now look, I didn't do this for any specific reason or anything like that, I really just done it so that we could have more mortars and thus, just kind of be more protected in general, but you're going to realize later on in this video that this was a really good idea on my part. Foreshadowing. Anyhow though, after heavily focusing on our defenses for a while, I decided we should switch it up a little bit, because if we're going to begin raiding people, we're going to be getting hurt, so we're going to need somewhere that we can actually let our soldiers recover and heal from their wounds. So we decided to build a very rudimentary hospital, albeit quite small and very cramped. It wasn't perfect, but at least we could ensure people with life-threatening injuries had a place to go immediately. But enough about all this hospital bullshit and all this and that. I know what you guys are here to see. You guys are here to see the American Continental Army attack some British settlements, and I'm about to give you exactly what you want, baby. Lucky for us, there just so happens to be a very nearby British settlement. It was known as the Great British City of Hoglybottom. Hey, don't look at me, I didn't name it. Yes, I did. But enough about my wonderful ability to name English cities. It's time for us to invade this settlement and take down the British. So with a hop and a scotch and a twiddle of our thumbs, we began marching all the way over there. Just after arriving at the city, I kind of shit my pants a little bit because I really was not expecting there to be this many enemies. Don't get me wrong, we outnumber them for sure, and we can definitely win at the end of the day in this battle, but I don't want to be carrying back about 20 or 30 dead bodies. So we would need to think a little bit outside the box on this one to ensure that we don't lose a bunch of our own soldiers. Now luckily we did bring our pack donkeys, and along with our pack donkeys we brought a bunch of materials like steel as well as wood. Now what we're going to be using this steel and wood for is a little secret. It's not a secret actually, we're building mortars. Yes indeed, we are going to begin shelling the absolute shit out of this British city. But that's not all. After they begin attacking us, I do actually have a teeny tiny trick up my sleeve. Our men began locking onto the settlement with their mortars, and they began firing the massive heavy gun stones right on top of the British heads. We did manage to get a little bit lucky with both of our shots and took out quite a few of the British soldiers, but after that they were pretty pissed about us killing some of their men, so they decided to attack us. And of course this is where my master plan comes into play. You see, I'm taking our soldiers hiding around the side of the hill, so as the British go and attack our mortars and our donkeys, we'll actually be waiting on them to begin coming back, and when they come back we'll start killing them. Or that was the idea at least. And in the end, it seemed to have worked out as the British forces began fleeing their own city. We were victorious without any casualties. Yeah, many of our men were extremely injured, but none had died. Now, by this point, we cleared out most of the buildings throughout the city, but this one in particular had a massive, filthy, disgusting stockpile of tea. Oh, we should have known we would find this here. This shit is like crack cocaine to these bastards. I'm just joking, I love the British. But no joke, this was an absolutely massive stockpile of tea, but there was actually something much more interesting just beyond this door. We could hear some sort of noises of rumbling and grumbling, and when we kicked open the door, there was a damn fully grown British governor within. And if there is one thing that you do not do, it's get between one of these little buggers and their stash of tea. I was hoping to capture him and sell him to the French as a slave, but unfortunately our men had other plans. Ah, damn it, the French will never buy him like this. They sliced him up like a damn tomato. Oh well, I suppose, nothing for us to do now but leave. But before we do that, we're gonna dump every last bit of this tea into the harbor. Yes, it had to happen at some point, you knew it. But after that, we took us a little walksy walk all the way back home. Sometime later, we had finally arrived just on the outskirts of our territory. And probably the most important part, we all returned back home. That's right, not one single casualty. Not only that, but we returned home with so many riches of weapons and art and things like that that we took from the British. And we had also managed to capture a couple of the British soldiers that we fought with, and we were going to turn them into our friends. Or we would enslave them if we had to. Look, sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do, okay? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section, though. Should we keep these British as slaves for us, or should we make a little bit of silver on them and sell them to the French? Oh, and I almost forgot, we have a quilted double bed that the British governor had in his room, and we decided to give it to good old Commander General whatever Henry. And as you can see, it would appear that he very much enjoyed it. He was very comfortable. After that, though, I found one of our soldiers named Puppy, and I just absolutely hate that name, but I love puppies. But since I hated this soldier's name, I decided to name him after our good friend Bamish_Alt, who said, you can just slap me right in there in the middle, called Zad. Hell yeah, brother, let's do it. And so it would be the soldier once known as Puppy would now be known as Zad in honor of our great friend. Well, Zad, old buddy, old pal, I just hope that you don't die. I'm sure that you won't. By this point, though, Rats Valley, the one true and only American colony, was a powerhouse of a fortress. It was absolutely gorgeous to marvel at, a marvel of engineering as well, of sorts. But even with as marvelous of engineering as we had, there was still so much more that we could do, so much more we could research and create. We only needed some wood. So after collecting a bunch of wood, we would then begin digging out a massive section of the southern hill for a true modern miracle. But first, we've managed to enslave the British soldier known as Trev, a trafficker, if you will. Well, look, I don't know what he's been trafficking, but I'm pretty darn glad we didn't let him join us now. For the time being, we'll just toss him in this shitty little bunk until we can figure out what to do with him. Maybe we'll let him clean our boots or the floors or something. But for now, we must return to our glorious work inside the mountain with our modern technologies. I'll give you all one guess as to what this modern technology is. If you get it right, I will kiss you on the mouth with tongue. If you get it wrong, I will still kiss you, but that's beside the point. Alright, time's up. Who guessed toilets and showers? Ding, ding, ding! We have a winner because we are building some beautiful stalls with some modern-esque toilets as well as some simple showers. Look, I know it doesn't exactly fit with the colonial time period that we're going with, but think about it. If the Romans had indoor plumbing, surely to God we could figure it out. I mean, the Romans didn't even have muskets. Besides, it's not as if we're using electricity or anything. We're just building this big metal tank for hot water, and then we're gonna stuff some logs in this little furnace to heat it up. Ah, and that, my children, is where babies come from. Wait, no. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I got excited when I saw all these plump American hams. The soldiers were actually kind of pissed about the showers because they were so impatient they didn't wait for the water to heat up. And apparently that's my fault somehow. But anyhow, it's time for some more research. We decided to begin researching sauna technology, and then this is going to actually give us access to fueled sauna heaters as well as sauna seating. I've actually never created a sauna with the Dubs Bad Hygiene mod, but I assume that it's actually going to boost people's moods and thus lower the risk of them having mental breaks and blah 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 blah. You understand what I'm getting at. And honestly, our research was going quite well. It was very efficient and very effective until, yes, we have a massive tribal raid. Now I know what you're thinking, a tribal raid, Rat Knight, that's simple, you've defeated 100 of them before, and I thought the same thing. Well, this couldn't be bad. It's bad. Not only are we being raided by these tribes people, we are being raided in 3 separate groups. All of them have a just absolutely shit ton of people, okay? This is a lot. And this may sound silly, but I am genuinely afraid of this raid. Not because I think we'll lose, although that is definitely a possibility with a raid of this size. I think we can definitely win. I just think we are going to have massive casualties. But my friends, I'm afraid I must keep you waiting on the result of this grand battle, for it shall happen in the next episode. Previously on the RimWorld Continental Army series, we had a massive tribal raid coming our way from 3 different sections of the territory, in what is commonly referred to as a deadly 3-way. Hey, how's it hanging, folks? It's your Rat Daddy here, and we are back with the RimWorld Continental Army, and we are indeed taking on a deadly 3-way of tribes people raiding us. Effective immediately, we are bombarding the absolute shit out of the raiders that we could see from the front of our base with cannons and mortars and everything that we had. This is the old tried and true method of hitting them with something really hard, really fast. Works every time. However, at a certain point, the tribes people got a little upset with us bombing the absolute shit out of them with cannons and mortars, so they began attacking us. Now, I was really thanking myself for building these new defenses last episode, like our slate doors on our entrance that we could shut, lock, and hide inside. Now, you might call that cowardly, but look at this massive raid. I call it survival of the fittest, baby. I was very thankful for our traps as well, because one of the groups of tribes people began to flee after they flung themselves on top of many of our wooden spike traps. Meaning now we only have to deal with 2 massive tribal raids. As the raid from the east approached, we began firing our mortars at them, but we weren't very accurate, unfortunately. So of course we would send our entire army out to the front gates to fight off the onslaught that was coming from the east as well as the south. The battle was very, very chaotic, though not all of them of course came to our front gates to fight. Some of them began banging on our outer walls, which once again I am very proud of myself for reinforcing. Well, before this video becomes one big love letter to myself, we have a battle to win, or possibly lose. I will say that I have the utmost faith in our military. I'm just a little bit scared because there are so many enemies, but luckily at a certain point we had killed enough of them that a second group of tribes people had began fleeing and we only had 1 left. However, with this third group approaching, we were becoming a bit overwhelmed still, and many of our soldiers were injured, so we began to retreat within our fortress where we would then shut the gates. Which damn near almost did not happen because of a rifle and some pemmican blocking the doorways, but luckily we managed to fight off the tribes people coming through and slam the doors shut on them, which very well was a massive turning point in the battle. And this was a great idea because after running inside, these tribes people would also hit our traps just outside, and we were desperately running out of traps. But this was enough to make them flee as well, and we had finally defeated the massive triple threat tribal raid. Without one single American casualty, I might add as well. Now, that isn't to say that this was easy at all. This may have been one of the toughest raids I've ever fought in RimWorld, I'm not going to lie. It took a long time to plan out exactly how to go about doing this. Plenty of pausing throughout the battle to try and plan things out, but we did manage it. And at the end of the day, we had massive piles of tribal corpses, and just as well plenty of fires to try and put out that had occurred during the course of the battle. Luckily, it did begin raining at one point, which saved us a lot of effort. One of our American soldiers, though, was down and out inside one of the burning towers, but luckily he was saved as well, and we did manage to get that fire out. We have managed to avoid any casualties from the battle thus far, but unfortunately we still have the risk of infection for our wounded. But the hardest part is over, and even though we could all get infections and die, or get dysentery and die, or get the flu and die, you know, I don't know, hopefully it won't happen. But no matter. Even if some of us were to die, every man is going to die at some point, and our remaining sons and daughters will carry on our mission of liberating this planet and bringing freedom to its inhabitants. You know, except for the poor fools that we captured after the battle. No, there's no freedom for them. Unless they want to be our friends. Like, you know, friends in one way or another. Speaking of our friends, our current friends, the Continental Army, are going batshit crazy from having to haul all the dead bodies and clean the blood off the battlefield and, you know, all that fun stuff. But unfortunately, somebody has to do it. We can't leave them just lying around the entrance of our fortress. What would the French think of us? They would be very disappointed. Plus, if we leave rotting corpses around our doors, we may end up getting lung rot, which is no bueno. Something that would also be no bueno is not fixing back our spike traps, because with all of our soldiers injured and whatnot, if we were to have another raid right now, we would be, hey, let's build some more showers. That sounds like a fun idea. Not only a fun idea, but a clean one as well, because if our soldiers are nice and clean, they won't be getting near as many infections, and it will also boost their mood to take some hot showers, preferably together. Something that should also help with boosting the morale and moods of our soldiers would be a nice big gaping sauna room where they could all get hot and sweaty and relax. Luckily, we were able to build 2 fueled sauna heaters, that way we don't have to use any electricity, the devil's magic. And just like that, our massive bathhouse is now a massive sauna and it is ready to go. Just in time, I might add, because it is now winter time. This is the very first snow of the season and also of this entire series. I am quite thankful that we worked on hand wrappings and boots in the previous episode, because now the majority of our soldiers do already have those and they should be fine for winter. Just as well, I am also extremely thankful for all of the food that we stockpile throughout spring and summer, especially our pumpkins, because we get a massive harvest yield from those. And of course, I assume our lads and lasses will be eating pumpkin soup all winter long. Things are going so well, winter is beautiful, nothing could go wrong for us. Hey, wait a minute, what's... Oh my dear God. The bullfrogs. They've finally come for us. After all these episodes of slaughtering them, he's here. The Frog King has arrived. And with his arrival, lightning strikes the ground, thunder shakes the earth. He's a monster. And with him, he brings his dastardly little toads, as well as 2 toad men of sorts as well. We shall show these acid-spitting, leather-skinned bastards no mercy on the battlefield. Lucky enough for us, many of their bullfrogs would actually hit our wooden spike traps, killing them before they could even make their way towards us. We immediately began opening fire on the Frog King and his disgusting subjects. After killing several of his frogs, he and his companions began to flee. Yes, run, you slimy cowards. Run back to the shithole swamp where you belong. We had better never catch you or any of your disgusting ass bullfrogs in our territory again, or you know what, anywhere on the planet as a matter of fact. If we come into contact with you again, you are dead. But hey, speaking of dead, that raid did provide us with plenty of dead bullfrogs that we could chop up and fry them in a pan and make, frog legs, and we could eat them. Not that food was really a big concern to us right now, but the more food the better, of course. Now in other news, once again we have began expanding to the eastern section of our territory. We are once again expanding our massive walls of our fortification to try and suck in more land so we can build more stuff. Now this time around, the land isn't going to be used for farming. We're not building any more grand bathhouses or anything like that. This time around, we're actually going to be building the White House. I know, the White House. It's crazy, I hear you. I hear you ask yourself, Rat Knight, why would you be building the White House? Well, my friends, we are going to begin holding some elections soon so we can have a president. And I feel that this is an exact carbon copy of the White House, which is the perfect abode for our president. I mean, truly, look at this. Can you even tell which is which? No, you cannot. Exactly, because they are freaking identical. I know, I'm good. You don't have to tell me. However, if you did want to leave a comment saying that, the algorithm might like it. That's all I'm going to say. A little bit of time later, it was finally time for us to begin harvesting our coffee plants, which was absolutely perfect. We harvest all our little coffee beans and start taking them into our food storage room, where we would then actually begin producing them into coffee. Now look, I get it. You probably think that I'm overhyping this coffee stuff, and maybe I am just a tad, but take a look at this. It really is quite useful. As you can see, after the soldier takes a sip of coffee, he ends up having 110% in consciousness, manipulation, talking, and eating, which makes him not only faster, but a better shot, better worker. But speaking of a better shot, we recently had a comment on our last video from our good friend Jonathan Miller 6381, who is actually saying that we should create kind of a special class of sharpshooters along with our militia and our just normal Continental Army soldiers, and I totally agree with you, Jonathan. Thank you very much for that. However, in my opinion, these soldiers are going to need their own attire. Not only that, but we need something that makes them unique. So I decided to give them their very own slouch hats, except for the commander, who has a feathered hat. I gave them the Baker rifle because I couldn't find anything on the workshop for Kentucky rifles or any New England rifles, anything like that, but the Baker rifle has a much better range and accuracy. Just as well, I also gave them some some webbing and some new backpacks. But you know, in my head I thought this just is not unique enough. They do look different than our average soldiers, but it's not enough. So I decided to give them some facial hair and some different hair colors to really help distinguish them from our average soldiers. And now I will also admit that, you know, if the beards, the hair colors, the new rifles, and all that great stuff wasn't enough to tickle your little fancy, the entire back row here of soldiers, well, just 5 soldiers of course, actually have names that you guys put in the comments section of the last video. Now, a bit of a disclaimer though, even though I love when you guys comment that stuff and everything, I'm not going to be able to name each individual soldier, a name that somebody leaves in the comments section. If you like to leave a name, there is a possibility that I might end up doing that if it really catches my eye, but I'm just not going to be able to do that every single time, unfortunately. Now, I did end up naming the commanding officer of our sharpshooters, Jonathan, after you, Jonathan Miller, the one who has left the comment, so thank you ever so much for that. You will forever be with us here as their commanding officer, you know, assuming you don't die anytime soon. Now, as we wrap up the episode, I decided to build a great big road around our White House, around the fortification. That way we can ensure proper mobility, then all that great shit I'm always yapping about. Basically just meaning we don't have to step over any trees or bushes or anything like that. And finally, before we end here today, I do want to mention that I have added a mod that everyone has been requesting that I add ever since, well, not even this series, previous series as well, but especially with this one I've seen a lot of comments about it. I have added the factional war mod to the mod list, and you can always find the mod list in the video description of each video of any series, but this series as well, of course. If somebody wants to kind of give me a rundown in the comment section as to exactly how the factional war mod works, I'd really appreciate it. I think I kind of have a basic understanding. The factions are going to be at war, and I can take part in that if I want to and attack them, and basically stuff like that. But if somebody wants to give me a more detailed explanation, I'd really appreciate that. But without further ado, people, I am ending this episode, and I'll see you in the next one. I love you. Welcome back, folks, to the 7th episode of our RimWorld Continental Army series, where at the moment we're actually holding presidential debates. Now just try to bear with me through these presidential debates, as our country is still in its infancy and we're not really sure how this should go. I do know for a fact, however, that Henry is going to absolutely win this thing very easily if we don't have any other contestants. But truly, who would be crazy enough to go against Henry in a presidential race anyhow? He has been our leader for a very long time. Gasp! Jonathan! It's you! Very well, Jonathan. I suppose if anyone stands a chance against Henry, it's you. And I suppose every good presidential debate needs a good moderator. Ah, now that's more like it. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. So, this question's actually for both of you. The Frog King poses a massive risk to American security. Do you care about law and order?
Are you in favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You follow it.
Are you in favor of law and order? Go ahead,
I'm in favor.
Ahora mismo, díselo ahora. En español, si quieres.
What a stupid son of a bitch.
Uh-oh. Things have escalated. Very well, I suppose we'll have to settle this debate over a round of fisticuffs. And the winner shall be our very first president. Dear Lord, he's done it. Henry has won the fist fight and is our very first president. Congratulations, old chap. I knew you had it in you. Not a moment too soon, it would appear. Well, I'm just glad that that's finally settled. Better luck next year, Jonathan. You poor. Somebody should really pick him up, though. But, you know, with Henry being our very first president, he really needs some presidential attire, so we wasted no time on having Beardy, our very best tailor, go and begin making him some. Now, this process did actually take a very long time because the uniforms and whatnot required a lot of work. and they were also Prussian uniforms because, once again, we don't have any American uniforms, but it'll work. And I think Henry looks pretty darn spiffy in his new uniform, but you know, he really needs something to set him apart from the other troops. Maybe a little flair from the old cosmic wrath. Ah, now that is what I'm talking about. He looks good. Yes, from the uniform to the little golden ropey thingies to the golden ropey shoulder pauldrons to his powdered wig. Now that is a president. And of course, a wonderful, handsome president is going to need a wonderful, handsome White House, so we began working on the interior of the White House for him. We would use nothing but the best materials to create the most interesting furniture. We actually made the same old shit that we give everyone else, but don't tell him. Anyhow, yes, like I was saying, the most interesting, beautiful furniture is something. I do, however, really like this table that is in Henry's room from the, I believe, Aaron's Cottage mod, which is an amazing mod that we've been using for the majority of the furniture this series. Now, speaking of mods, I have added a few new ones that you can find in the mod list in the video description, one of which actually gives us American Civil War weapon technology. We just have to research it, of course. Now, I don't want to get too crazy with the Civil War era technology. I want a very slow progression as we take on the Frog King, the British, and anyone else that stands in our way. I don't want to go from Neolithic to Spacer in the snap of your fingers. But of course, I do think that some technological progression is going to be much needed and is going to keep the series interesting. But while they are researching these new weapon technologies, while we're on the topic of weapons, we need a place to put all the damn weapons we have. We have so many rifles and whatnot, yet we keep them in our warehouse where they take up precious space from our resources. So we decided to build a small armory so that we can store all of our weapons. And of course, then we had the tedious and frustratingly slow task of moving all the bows and muskets and yada yada yada. You know, we got all that shit packed over there. It just took forever. But that was fine, of course, because by the time we got all these obsolete antique weapons over to the armory, we had actually finished up some of the research and we were able to create a galore gunsmith table. I feel like the words are a little out of order there, but we can actually make these new weapons. And even with the little bit of technology that we've currently researched, we still have quite a few guns that we can actually make, but these guns are going to take wood, steel, and most importantly, components. So we're going to need to begin mining components out of the hillside, trading for components if we're ever going to equip this entire army with these new weapons. Which of course, obviously, is the game plan here, and I kind of dread it because I know it's going to take a lot of resources and a lot of time. But now that we have the appropriate amount of resources and the appropriate technologies research, let us begin building our very first Sharps M1859 sniper rifle. Now, Beardy is our best smith, crafter, tailor, yada yada yada, but it still takes Beardy an extremely long time to make these weapons, and this is why I was saying I really dread arming the entire army, but we'll get around to it. We'll get it done. But of course, as Beardy works tirelessly on our very first sniper rifle, we have other business to attend to. We have a few horsies that have entered the area, so of course, naturally, we're going to attempt to tame them. A lot of you guys have said that you'd like for me to set up kind of a cavalry unit, so I'd like to do that, but of course we need horses because our donkeys aren't going to cut it. Plus, of course, the more animals that we have that we can ride, it's going to make our caravans faster. It's just going to be great all around. Horses are exactly what we need. Good old American thoroughbreds. And while we were out petting some ponies in a field, Rowdy, who was one of the people we captured previously, has decided to join us. Now, of course, Rowdy is going to be joining our militia. So we let Rowdy go into the warehouse and pick out some shitty clothing, and then Rowdy got to go into the armory and pick out some shitty weapons. But then, after that, huzzah! Beardy has finally made our very first Sharps model sniper rifle. Now, of course, we felt pretty bad that Jonathan had lost the fist fight and thus lost the election for president, so we gave him the very first sniper rifle. And of course, he is the leader of our sharpshooter class, so he deserves it. Plus, of course, he will be able to get more acquainted with it and test it out, and then be able to teach his men once we're able to create sniper rifles for them as well. Now, to test out our sniper rifle as well as our sharpshooter class, I decided to send them and them alone out on a trade mission with the French. During this trade mission, we're going to be trading roosters, we're going to be trading people, we're going to be trading weapons. We're basically just going to try to sell the French all kinds of shit for some moolah. Not only that, of course, but after we load all these weapons up out of the armory, that's going to clear up space for our new weapons that we're getting, and also weapons we would get from future raids and stuff like that. And after some time, our sharpshooters and their donkeys finally headed out with all the goods and people and whatnot to sell to our French allies. Now, while they're off on their trading mission, though, I do have a little bit of a special treat for two of our soldiers, two lucky men. With Henry as our president, of course, the president is going to need some special type of guard, like the Secret Service or something like that, of course. But this is ye old times, so we're not going to have people in black suits and ties with earpieces. Nay, we have two handsome, strapping young lads in green uniforms. The two of them together are going to be the presidential guards, keeping Henry safe all the time. Now, they do need some new names, though, and I decided to take some names from our comments on the last video. So thank you guys ever so much for commenting your names and whatnot. If you'd like to continue doing that, if I see any that stick out or I really like them, we may use them for some of our soldiers. But as for now, we're done with these damn names. We have goods and people to sell to the French. We ended up selling Trev as he was the weakest link, and then began selling every single bow and arrow that we could. They wouldn't purchase any of our muskets for some odd reason, but we sold our bows, so we made some silver. Back at home, it looks like our boys in blue had managed to tame a few of these horses, so the next thing we would work on here is some armor for said horses. Preferably wooden armor, as we need our steel right now, but we could always upgrade it later. Naturally, we would task Beardy with creating said armor. As I've mentioned several times, Beardy is what you young kids would call the GOAT. Ah, look at our flourishing civilization. Beautiful, isn't it? Truly a beautiful and honorable symbol of American prosperity. Oh my, what is this? Dear God, it would appear that the Bullfrogs and a local tribe are having a massive battle. But not only that, within our territory. And if that wasn't bad enough, if that didn't make you nauseated, sick to your stomach, it would appear that the Bullfrogs have become commies. Oh no, that is quite enough. It's one thing to be a disgusting, hideous bullfrog, but it's another to be a communist, disgusting, hideous bullfrog. We are going to help our tribal allies defeat these putrid filth. Lucky enough for us, based on the size of the tribal forces, it would appear that it won't take much to help them defeat the bullfrogs, but we're still going to chip in. And of course, so we immediately began firing our mortars at the bullfrogs. Unfortunately, this really didn't amount to much as we missed him with the only shot that we fired, but that's okay, we'll have other chances. After some time, the tribal forces and the bullfrogs began making their way towards one another on our western side of our fortification, and so thus we would start the beginning steps of our plan to help our tribal allies. For you see, we're going to hide inside of our walls until the frogs are close enough that we can actually fire and kill a few of them, and then we're going to jump back in and hide again. Hey look, I said I was going to help our tribal allies. I didn't say I was going to fight the whole darn battle for them. Besides, look at them, they appear to be holding out on their own pretty well. The earth shook from the clamor of footsteps of the tribespeople and bullfrogs running at one another. The sounds of distressed toads in agony filled the air. It was like music to our ears. The battle continued to rage on up until the point that all the humanoid bullfrog creatures were dead and the only thing left were the small toads on the ground, and after they stomped on a few of those, the rest of them got scared and started to run away. The horrifying, tragic sight left over from the massive battle was truly a pitiful sight to see, honestly. And you know, these tribes people, they may not have been Americans, but we will make them honorary Americans for their sacrifice here today on this battlefield against these horrible communist bullfrogs was immense. I salute you, tribesmen. But now if you'll excuse us, President Henry needs to soak his old bones in a nice hot bath. He saw a bit too much death for one day. It's time to ease his troubled mind, as well as wash the day's filth away from his supple skin. Welcome back, one and all, to the RimWorld Continental Army series. As your rat daddy, I am just overjoyed that you could join me here today for yet another glorious, wonderful, adventurous episode. We have quite a bit going on this episode, and quite a bit that happened with the last episode, but first we have our caravan returning from their trading mission with the French. Yes, indeed, Jonathan and his sharpshooters have finally returned home. It's a shame they missed all the action at the end of last episode with the massive frog raid fighting the tribes people, but of course now that they're finally home, we really need to buckle down on producing more sniper rifles for them and also building a production area for other types of weapons. So we actually ended up building a gunsmithing area. Now this gunsmithing building is quite small, but there is enough room for 3 people to be building guns at one time. We have built them a little heater, but we're also going to build them some nice comfy cottage chairs in there because these guns take a very long time, so they're going to be sitting and standing for long periods of time as well. And we want to make sure they don't bruise their little tushies, yeah. But now, as we're working on our defenses and weapons and whatnot, I also thought maybe it's about damn time we finally start sprucing this place up. I had commissioned a grand sculpture be made quite a while ago, and it was finally finished, so I said let's put that in a good little spot and plant some bushes around it. It turned out pretty gorgeous, I would say. But having some gorgeous decor in our roads is only going to take us so far if those roads are dirty, muddy, horse shit filled roads still. We're building sniper rifles for God's sake, but we haven't put down any decent roads. So we did. We began building some beautiful marble cobblestone streets along with some slate tile sidewalks. And of course, though, all this road building went on simultaneously with our weapon production. That's right, baby, we know how to multitask. Now, sometime later, we had heard of a component mining work site not too far from our fortification, ran by a faction we had yet to meet. However, they had 77 components, which was much more than we were able to mine in our territory. And since we desperately need components for these new types of firearms that we're making, we didn't really give a shit which faction it was. We would come in, slaughter everyone, and take all the components. It just so happened though that we were lucky enough to stumble upon this new faction's mining work site, and this new faction, though I don't really know what they are, a bunch of furries or something, appear to be some type of vassal state or something to that effect of the British Empire. So in other words, we were going to come in, pillage them, kill them, and take all their shit either way, but it just so happened to work out that they were already our enemies. Regardless of who or what they are, I should say, Jonathan and the others had no problem with shooting these hairy man-beasts right in the face. The large hairy creatures would try to attack us head-on for quite a while, but unfortunately for them, we had slaughtered most of their friends before the others even got there, and eventually they were smart enough to try and run away. After defeating the group of Sasquatch creatures, we went to their base to look for the components, and we couldn't find anything within the base at all. It was completely empty on both sides, in terms of resources at least. However, to the eastern side of the base, we did find where they were actually mining, and thankfully we had managed to find all 77 of the components that were promised to be in this mining worksite. We were beginning to think our information may be incorrect. After traveling deeper into the mine, we actually found a safe as well that had 461 silver within. And of course, 461 silver isn't a lot of silver, but it was a nice little cherry on top of the death pie we cooked up here today. As our caravan was returning home, everything was going so smoothly, so swimmingly back home. I mean, you know, up until the point that it wasn't. Yes, indeed, while the majority of our forces are out, we are now being raided by the British Empire once again. Now, this may not seem like a big deal, especially with the British raid not being that large, but the problem is the majority of our army is still on its way back home, leaving us somewhat defenseless. But the president and his men were brave. They ran to the front entrance to try and slam the doors shut behind them. That way the British couldn't just walk right on through. He immediately began firing mortars at them. If they wanted us, they would have to come and take us. And so they tried, of course, but lucky enough for us, we had enough traps surrounding our bridges that took out the majority of their forces, and after a few more of them stepped on some traps, they decided to flee. And what few remaining of them could walk did get away, unfortunately. However, there were a few of them on the ground who had been hit by the traps, and so we decided to capture them, of course. They may be a bunch of filthy tea drinkers, but maybe we could convert them into militiamen or something of that sort, or like this one here that has unwavering loyalty, we could enslave him and sell him to the French as property. Look, don't even try to lecture me about morality and how that's not okay, Rat Knight. I never said we were good people. And as a matter of fact, I'm a damn dirty rat. But hey, in other news, once again, our caravan of soldiers has returned from their adventurous raiding of the mining work site. It would also appear they managed to imprison one of those furry bastards and bring back with them. But of course, more importantly, with them, they brought back those beautiful, gorgeous, scrumdiddlyumptious components, which was perfect. Now, there is something I forgot to mention last episode. We ended up having a mega sloth self-tame at some point, and I only remembered once I caught him eating our rose bushes. So naturally, of course, there was only one logical conclusion. We would have to execute this mega sloth for treason, to which of course we did, and we were quite pleased with the results. For not only did we execute a traitor, but we also got plenty of meat and leather out of the entire ordeal, and after we chopped him up, we also had his beautiful little head that we would then mount on a piece of wood. Now that's what I call justice. At some point, the inevitable happened and we had two new lovers. Turns out Hayo and Kenzaki were discussing a lovely spring or something, and she apparently became aroused. Well, goodness gracious, Hayo, old boy, I didn't know you had it in you. Congratulations. It was at this point, though, I decided that we should probably begin building some bunks or barracks where we can actually have couples and families with babies and whatnot live, so we began building one of the first of those. And I must say, for our first draft of this type of barracks, it seems to have turned out fairly well. Kenzaki and Hayo seem to really enjoy it. It looks nice and comfy in there with their quilted bed. Now all they gotta do is make us some babies. But of course, while they're busy making babies, we have other things to attend to, such as our city streets. Now you may notice that our cobblestone streets are made of marble, and we're running a little bit low on marble as we only have 19 marble chunks on the entire map. Now, because of the lack of marble chunks just lying around, I actually found some marble mountains in the southeastern part of our territory and made some strip mining orders so that we can get more of those chunks, turn those into blocks, and continue our work on our city streets. It was by this point as well, we had finally finished all of our Sharps model sniper rifles, so we had all of our sharpshooter class go in and equip a rifle each. And this did take a very long time, as we knew that it would, even given the fact that we have 3 gunsmithing tables now, but we did finally get it done, and with this, Jonathan's sharpshooters are finally ready. Among their ranks are the bravest, the steadiest of hands, and the most courageous of heart. They are some true red-blooded Americans through and through. Now, speaking of red-blooded Americans, our good friend here, Chase Stewart, 8419, has said that he's been keeping tracks on Cosmic, and hopefully Cosmic survives. I will say, since the beginning, Cosmic has also caught my eye, and he's just one of my favorite soldiers all around. And now recently as well, Sean SM has also petitioned that I, the Rat, make a Bullfrog torture division within our ranks. So with all that being said, and taking your comments and consideration into, well, consideration, I thought who better than Cosmic to have this special role as a Bullfrog torturer. Of course, at some point, we're going to most likely add other soldiers to this class and division as well, but first we'll start with Cosmic. Now, he's of course going to need some new duds. And there was no one better than Beardy to begin working on a special soldier coat for our Bullfrog torturer division that Cosmic can wear, and etc, etc. You understand what I'm getting at here. So after a while, the coat was finally completed, and also along with it we had a beautiful black top hat for Cosmic. And I will say that the design of Cosmic's Bullfrog torturer uniform is probably one of my favorites. I love it. It's kind of dark and brooding, and it gives off torturer vibes to me. Well, just so happened, Cosmic did get some useful information out of his very first Bullfrog interrogation. It turns out there's some type of ancient Bullfrog structure right under our noses, right to the south of our fortification. Hell, we thought it was part of the mountain. After relaying the information to President Henry, he granted Cosmic a group of soldiers to take to the ancient structure so they could crack it open, see what secrets hide within, and then, I don't know, kill it, extract the secrets, whatever they need to do. Knowing the Bullfrogs, though, God only knows what disgusting, horrific secrets lie within. Regardless, though, there is only one way for us to find out. Welcome back, one and all, to the RimWorld Continental Army. When we last left off, Cosmic was just about to crack open this ancient danger. So I say, let's do it. My dear Lord, to think this beautiful jade structure has been hidden right beneath our noses this whole time. Such gorgeous sarcophagi. This appears to be some type of sacred burial ground for the Bullfrogs, or maybe even a place of worship. And defending it all is an ancient Bullfrog warrior in some type of plasteel armor. Yoink! Don't mind if we do. With this disgusting but distinguishedly dressed Bullfrog warrior out of the way, there was nobody stopping us from tearing down this sacred jade palace and using it for something, I suppose. Look, I haven't really planned out what we're going to use all the jade for, maybe statues or something. But quite frankly, that's none of your business, and it is my business because I stole it fair and square. After the threat was neutralized, our army moved in quite quickly to begin dismantling the jade sacred palace. And now, of course, that this ancient danger is no longer a concern to us, it was time for us to absorb this part of the territory into our fortification. And now look, you're probably saying to yourself, good God, Rat Knight, but you already have so much land in your fortification already, what could you possibly want this land for? Well, my dear sugar plums, I plan on building beautiful farms in this new territory and getting rid of our old farming land, that way we can continue our beautiful city. And it's all going to be beautiful, damn it. And of course, speaking of our cities, we would continue working on our city streets all throughout the western section of our fortification. Which notably, as always, it's going to take quite a long time to get that done, so we have other business to attend to. Aha, yes, let us make more guns. This time around, we're going to be making a Palmer 1865 model carbine. Naturally, of course, as you already know, these guns are going to take quite a while to be created. Of course, though, they are faster than the sniper rifles that we were previously producing. And just as the sniper rifles, these carbines are going to be given to a new class of soldier. But I can't tell you right now what class that's going to be because it's my little secret. Now, while all those carbines are being created, I do want to use all the jade that we collected from the sacred frog tombs, or whatever the shit that was, to make a beautiful grand statue. But we're sure as shit not going to be using wood or steel, only the finest jade. And of course, there was no one more skilled or more deserving than Kenzaki herself. She and she alone would be tasked with building this beautiful, grand statue of someone, definitely not the president. But while all these projects are going on with our gunsmithing, our statue building, yada yada, I did notice that Cosmic's frog torture chamber is a little bit shabby, and we should really give him an appropriate torture chamber so that he can make sure he's getting all the appropriate information from those devilish amphibians. So of course, naturally, that's exactly what we began working on. The design here is going to be so that we have 3 holding cells to begin with. We can always dig more, of course, and 1 large section in the middle for the torturing tools and just the torture in general. It was quite the project, especially since we had to dig out the steel that was within as well. Oh, and also the part where we started getting raided while we were working on it. It would appear that our good old enemies, the British, have arrived nearby just outside our territory and began trying to siege us. Oh, those poor, dumb, tea-drinking, furry-loving fools. Don't they know that this fortification is, well, quite frankly, a fortification? It was designed for this exact purpose. This fort was not built to keep them out. It was to keep us in. And these bastards are about to find out exactly why. We immediately began firing upon them with our mortars. After striking them a time or two, the fools began attacking us. In doing so, of course, they were led directly into our spike traps, planted in all directions around our base. Truthfully, I must say that I was afraid. Not because we're being raided, but I was afraid that the spike traps would finish them off before they had the chance to get here so that we could start pounding their asses with our rifles. Because if there's one thing the rat that daddy loves. It's pounding some British wait a minute. Anyway, though, the British began trying to enter our base, and there were a few of them that got hit by spike traps, but the others got shot by us, and eventually they began to flee like the cowards we knew they were. Disclaimer, once again, I do love the British, but that's not going to stop me from hunting these bastards down in this virtual game and slaughtering them like hogs. To which, of course, we did. We had such a bloodlust going, I even ordered our men to shoot down these damn dirty Thromboians, just for the sheer thrill of it. And by good God almighty, it worked. And at the end of the day, we had a bunch of dead, furry, British vassal state people, a bunch of dead British people, and a bunch of Thromboians to cut up, eat, and we even began using their heads to mount on our walls, as you know we do, baby. Now, with that being said, it's also worth mentioning that the British actually didn't use all of their mortar shells, so we had some wonderful explosive mortar shells, some rifles, and the standard survival meal stuff. Now that the threat is gone, though, and all of that was taken care of, it was time for us to return to our torture chambers to begin beautifying them a bit. Well, as beautiful as a massive torture chamber for humanoid amphibian frog creatures could be. And thankfully, by the time we were finished with all that, our rifles were finally completed as well. And you know what that means, it's time for me to introduce to you our new soldier class, our brand new unit into the army. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you our cavalry units. I know what you're thinking, these are just stupid normal soldiers with funny hats. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Okay, look, maybe it is true, however, I did make them a bit more interesting by giving them facial hair, different head sizes, things like that, and also, most importantly, I ended up giving the soldiers some of the names that you wonderful people have been leaving in the comment section, so please continue doing that. I would eventually like to try and use the majority of the names you guys have been leaving. Because to be honest with you, I would like to continue this series for probably a very long time, even if we need to take some breaks here and there, so eventually I'd like to have some massive armies that I can use all those wonderful names. So thank you guys, of course, as always. I love you ever so much. I hope to continue growing this cavalry unit as well, as right now we only have 5 soldiers. And really, I could have added more soldiers, but we do need more horses with armor and whatnot, and also I kind of have some big plans. Some big plans that involve me not really wanting to split up our army too much right now. But you'll see what I mean. As for right now, though, we are going to be attacking a tribal settlement. These tribes people are notorious for aiding the Frog King in his efforts against attacking us as well as our French allies, so something must be done about them. In other words, it sounds like they need a good old taste of the red, white, and blue. And of course, you already know that we were more than happy to oblige them in such an endeavor. Upon further inspection after arriving for the raid, it would appear that this base was quite large and developed. Nonetheless, though, as the thundering rain poured upon our American heads, we would prepare for our siege. We first began by tying up our donkeys and our horses next to the mortars. This would allow us, while getting our mortars ready, having our cavalrymen mount up as well. Then, of course, all at once the mortars were prepared, and we began firing off the mortar shells that the British had left behind in their siege against us. They were the perfect destructive power for attacking this tribe, as were our strapping young American soldiers. As you well know already, our lads were armed to the absolute teeth, some of them with the most sophisticated technology of the time. Others not so much, but that was okay though, because they could still put up one hell of a fight, as could President Henry and his own personal guard. There was no way in hell he was missing out on this battle. And it's a good thing too, because here come those devious tribes people. But of course, as the earth shook beneath our feet with the thunder and the lightning and our faces drenched in the rain, we were more than prepared for this battle. Our noses were filled with the smell of gunpowder, our hearts filled with the courage of 1,000 lions, and better yet, our eyes filled with the sight of our enemies dropping at our feet. And as the lightning lit up the battlefield, we realized that the tribe's people were fleeing and we were victorious. Not only had we defeated this horrific tribe who had been aiding the Frog King and his army, but we had also claimed a new territory. A territory that, I might add, was well developed, as I mentioned earlier, but also ripe for a new colony. That's right, people. The Americans are expanding, and I'm not just talking about our beautiful fortification back at Rats Valley. No, I'm talking about brand new colonies. Now, quite a few of you guys had mentioned, especially earlier in the first few episodes, how we should try to have a challenge where we actually have 13 colonies. I don't think we're going to do that many, but 3 to 4 might be okay. And we're starting that here today with our second colony. Now, I don't really have a name for it just yet, so if you guys have any wonderful names for our new colony, be sure to leave that in the comment section down below. Of course, we began the new colony by going through the old buildings and whatnot and searching for anything useful. Unfortunately, there wasn't really much, but that's okay, at least there's a few beds. After that was completed, we went around the entire base, tearing down the old sandbags that lined the outer walls. We also were cutting down a lot of trees during this time so we could collect plenty of wood. Because of course, as you well know, given the day and age and our technology of the time, wood is still the most abundant resource to get our hands on for any base building. And base building is exactly what we had in mind. We were going to build a second fortification around our brand new colony here. One, of course, that we can expand in the future, but for now, this is going to be about the size of it, I suppose. Unfortunately, even given the fact that we had the vast majority of our army still here, it did take us quite a very long time to build these wooden walls with wooden towers at the corners and doorways. Now, of course, a lot of that can be attributed to the fact that there's a lot of thunderstorms and rain constantly happening here, probably from the battle with the fires that were started and things like that, but still, granted, it took quite a while. Eventually, though, the walls and gateways were completed, and as was our fortification here, and it was finally time for the majority of our military, at least, to go back home. The president and his men would return sometime in the future to check back in on our new colony. But as for now, they had a long journey back home ahead of them, and our new colonist here had a lot of work to do. There were a grand total of 8 colonists and 2 slaves. 5 of our colonists were from the Continental Army, and 3 of them, of course, were our militia members. Now, you may look at this group of people and say, wow, that's an odd choice of the people you chose to lead this colony. And I totally agree, but I also chose people that, I wouldn't care if they died. I joke, I kid. They'll be fine, probably. But my friends, that's going to do it for this episode. As the president travels back home and we work on our new colony, I must bid you farewell. Guess who's back? Back again. Ratty's back. Tell a friend. Back with more Continental Army videos, that is. Back, of course, not only with more Continental Army videos, but we are in the second beautiful colony of our Continental Army series in our great American colonies, of course. Ah, yes, our new unnamed and untamed colony is very beautiful and wonderful. However, we should go back to our roots, and by that, of course, I mean go back to Rats Valley for a moment. For back home at Rats Valley, there's still much to do. One of the things that we must do is put up this beautiful jade sculpture that had finally been completed. Ah, good old President Henry has never looked more handsome than in this bust. Speaking of the beautiful statue though, funny enough, this statue is actually made by Cosmic instead of Kanzaki. Kanzaki, of course, was the original person working on one, but this one was finished by Cosmic while Kanzaki was out with the President's Caravan. So, unfortunately, Kanzaki's version will never be seen by our beautiful eyes, but that's okay, because now we have this one made by Cosmic, and it's just as good. Some might even say better, and I'll tell you something that's better. We found a better use for all that Bullfrog jade from their sacred structure, or whatever the hell it was. Aha, but would you look at that. Speak of the devil, the president, his massive war party has returned home, finally. Now, of course, we were getting along just fine while they were on the road, but it is very hard for construction projects and things of that nature to get completed without the majority of our army back home. Of course, though, luckily we did manage to finish up the construction project of this beautiful statue of Henry just as he walked through the doors. And I must say that Cosmic is one hell of a sculptor. This is truly uncanny. I can't even tell the difference. Now back at our unnamed, untamed colony, we have a lot of work to do over there as well to get things ready to basically live here. First things first, we're going to be doing a lot of deconstruction, not only for resources, but to also get a lot of the shit that we're not going to be using out of the way. We're going to be turning these 2 buildings into a kitchen kitchen and dining hall, as well as a storage building. Just as well, we're also going to be working on some showers and toilets and things like that, because last episode, for whatever reason, I completely forgot that we still are using Dub's bad hygiene, so we need somewhere to shit. And then it happened. It was time for us to name this colony. And a lot of you guys left some really wonderful names, but I decided to go with our good friend Fan David Z. Immerman 1095. I'm sorry, buddy. You have left the wonderful colony name of New Marsai, I believe is how you pronounce this. That's what I'm going to be calling it, but it is to honor our French allies, and I absolutely love it, so thank you for that. Truly a magnificent, gorgeous name for a magnificent and gorgeous city on the rise. Well, colony, of course. Back home at our OG colony, though, there's still quite a bit going on. There's plenty of work to be done, especially on our roads. Of course, we have to ensure proper mobility around this colony, so we are continuing to work on our roads. However, while working on our roads of the colony, we ended up recruiting Kalwashesh. I don't know how you say it, but it's one of the furry man people that we captured from the British vassal state. Now, since our people at Rats Valley hate these furry bastards, we let him equip some new apparel as well as some weapons, and then we began to send him on his way to the new colony. Now, of course, it's not as though this is a punishment or anything like that, although we did make him walk all the way there all by his lonesome. No, it's simply because, well, we really just want to send the colonists that we've yet to give a shit about to this new colony in case it all burns down and they all die. On our way there, we received word of a factional bombardment. Apparently 2 factions are just bombarding the absolute shit out of each other, but since we didn't know who it was, we didn't want to get involved. And then some time later, our hairy-ass friend finally made it to the new world, the new colony. And it was about this time I realized that I had forgotten our mortars just lying out there on the battlefield. And then I would once again forget about them once I saw that we had 2 brand new lovers. Oh my god. Apparently our colonist Dongru really wooed Eva by playfully making fun of her hardiness, and apparently that just really warmed her up, and the 2 were in love now. So we decided to build them a beautiful little cabin they can share together. Somewhere nice and cozy that they may even be able to raise a family if they so wish. But it's going to be real darn hard to raise any families if we don't have any food, so we started working on some new crop fields. However, one of the wonderful crops we began planting was smoke leaf. You can think of it as like colonial hemp or something if you like, but we're going to smoke it. It doesn't matter. That was a joke, of course, because we're actually going to sell it, a bit of a cash crop, if you will. Something else that we have plenty of in this new world where our colony is plenty of wildlife, such as boars, and you know, I thought it would be really nice if we had some domesticated hogs that we could ride around on or just raise and slaughter. For now, we only managed to get 1 boar, but that was alright. We still began building a pen to keep her in as well as her future descendants. And I must say that she really seemed to enjoy it in there. And now with that completed, probably one of the most crucial things that we should have done before this, of course, is build some defenses. However, unfortunately, while building said defenses, we were then attacked by bullfrogs. Shit, it appears we may have been a little bit too late on those defenses, but that's alright, we're still going to try and blast the shit out of them with our muskets. It's just a shame we couldn't send any cannonballs flying at their big, disgusting amphibian heads. There's always next time. Now then, as the frog warriors began approaching our front gates, we decided that we should probably run inside before we get overwhelmed. And that seemed to work for the most part. Until they started busting down our doors. Even though they had busted down a few of our doors, though, they didn't fully come inside just yet. And with that being the case, we decided that we would be a little bit sneaky and pop out one of the side entrances and start firing upon every single frog we saw. After doing so, we then re-entered our colony and began trying to kill off any frogs that had actually made it inside, and after killing as many as possible, the others began to flee, a smart choice on their part. However, of course, before they left, they decided to leave us a few presents in the form of burning down our bathroom and one of the towers of our walls. Thankfully, though, we did manage to get those put out. After putting out all the fires and trying to make sure all our people were tended to and whatnot, and didn't bleed to death, of course, in this rainy fog, we decided to begin rebuilding and working on our defenses once more. Of course, though, with that being said, those defenses are not going to be that great if they're just made of wood and cloth and whatnot with the sandbags, so it's about time that we ship a massive load of bricks over to our new colony. colony. And so we did, of course. We sent Rican and Valentin with all of our animals, just packing a bunch of bricks, as many as we could fit into their saddlebags. After crossing the river, they then began their journey all the way, not even stopping once to take in the beautiful American countryside. Ah, such a pity. Oh look, we made it. Now all we gotta do is bring these mules and horses over to the colony with their beautiful stone blocks, and then we can finally begin working on a extra layer to our wooden walls of slate and granite. Now this secondary layer of stone wall onto our already wooden walls is actually going to take a very long time. We don't have near a fraction of the manpower at this new colony. So of course, naturally, as construction is ongoing, we would begin working on other types of defenses, like making cannonballs for our cannons out at the front gate, and just as well, we would also begin bringing our mortars inside as well. Unfortunately, as it stands, we don't have any gunstones or anything to fire out of our mortars, but that's okay. We'll get those in due time. Now, of course, speaking of time, after quite a bit of it, we were almost finally finished with the walls on our fortress. And I want to mention as well, a lot of the reason that this took so long as well, of course, is because we added a mod that adds different types of bridges that can be made of stone and whatnot that can actually hold stone walls, as we really needed it with how marshy and swampy this area is, so those took a really long time as well. Now back home at good old Rats Valley, we had a Prussian bulk goods trader stop in nearby. This is our first, I think, Prussian trader really in the entire series, or if we had others, I didn't mention them. Anyhow though, we had a smorgasbord of chickens and other goods that we decided to sell to them, and after selling them, we got quite a bit of silver, even though we also bought 15 components from them for our gun production. But you know, I began thinking to myself, we have all this silver, yet we just keep it in our warehouse. Surely, Rat Daddy, you could build a bank. You know me, you're onto something. So I, the Rat Daddy, have decided to build a bank out of granite stones, the most powerful and defensive of all the stone. We had ourselves some wooden pallets to store all our riches on. Unfortunately, at this moment, we don't have a floor, but we'll get around to building one. Ah, yes, things are wait a minute. What in the name of the Lord is that? Do you see that? Those two little green specks just wobbling around. Oh God, just as I suspected, monsters in our midst. This looks like a job for Cosmic and a pissed off posse of Americans. That's right, open fire on them, boys. There's nowhere those little green freaks can run to get away from us. Haha, would you look at that? We've killed one of them. Only one more to go. That's right, you little bastard. You better take off. Not like you could get away anyways, as I mentioned before, but we love a good chase. You poor dumb son of a bitch. Just around the corner in an open field, are we? Hey-ya! Ah, catharsis, salvation, nirvana. A dead frog. All these things are the same to me, for there is truly no greater bliss than killing one of these scaly sons of bitches, and also, of course, keeping our country safe and sound. But of course, speaking of keeping our country safe and sound, we're going to need some new weapons, so we had Kenzaki begin researching some more. Now of course, up until this point, we have been doing a lot of research into different types of weapons and things like that, but something that we have yet to actually research are repeaters. So percussion repeaters are going to be the next step, at least in my mind, of our standard military weaponry. So of course, with this newfound technology, we would immediately go to the gunsmithing table and begin working on some Colt ring lever repeaters. Now of course, since we're going to try to make this the standard rifle for our army, we're going to be making quite a few of them. However, I do expect this to take a very, very long time to get all of those rifles completed. In the past, just 10 or 5 rifles or so have taken a very long time, so this is going to take a while. So in the meantime, I've decided to equip 5 soldiers with very specific weapons and armor so that they may join our cavalry units. Yes indeed, you have heard me correctly, I'm adding 5 more members to our cavalry. And of course, you already know what that means. That means that these 5 beautiful gentlemen are going to be receiving some makeovers as well as names provided from you guys. So of course, some of these names may seem very familiar to you if you've left a comment about them and whatnot. And of course, I chose these 5 names at random. Now, 4 of these members are just normal cavalry guard or soldier or whatever you like to call them, but there is one of them who is actually the leader of the unit. And this handsome SOB is going to be named Kaser Wilhelm. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but this comment was also left by Kaiser Wilhelm _2-y. I think you can see it. Anyhow, though, I know you've been leaving this comment for quite a while, so I appreciate your dedication, but also your patience. I love you very much. But now, of course, with Kaiser Wilhelm being the leader of our cavalry unit, that does mean that he needs his very own personal cabin, so we quickly began building him a beautiful little home at the edge of town. And once construction had finally finished on his very own little cabin, he was so eager to rush in and lie down in his beautiful, comfy, quilted bed. Ah, yes, you enjoy your rest, my friend. You are going to do some great things. Truly, though, I begin to wonder what's the point of all these cavalrymen if we don't have any massive British raids to fight off? Oh, there we are. Haha, yes indeed. Finally another British battle. It would appear that we're being raided by 3 separate groups. And it would appear, of course, that these groups are fairly well-sized as well, with a few different varieties of soldiers, from linemen to officers, and that's kind of it. Infantry, that's about it. But still, of course, nevertheless, a very exciting battle. Something extremely exciting as well. It would appear that there is a governor among them. Ah, yes, the famous, world-renowned British governor known as Governor Wiggly Snout. Your reputation precedes you, my friend. But of course, if you'll excuse me, I and my men must prepare to beat the absolute dog shit out of you fools. I have nothing but the utmost pure of faith in all my men, and I have nothing but the purest belief that this is going to be a battle for the ages. Hello one and all, and welcome back to yet another glorious episode of our Continental Army series. As you probably remember from the end of last episode, we're about to get absolutely flambasted by 3 groups of British troops. That is, of course, assuming they can even make it within the walls of our city, which of course we don't plan on letting happen, so we're firing mortars at them every chance we get, missing most of those shots, but some of them are hitting, so I guess at the very least we're taking out a few of their troops before the initial raid. Now, something that we've decided to do. Jonathan has been brave enough to lead his group of sharpshooters out on a suicide mission against the British. Yes, indeed, because we're not having much luck with our mortar shots, Jonathan and his sharpshooters have decided to go out and begin firing upon one of the groups of the British soldiers, killing as many as possible before they begin raiding us. But now with the onslaught of troops coming towards our front entrance, the sharpshooters would begin making a strategic retreat to come back as our other soldiers began preparing for what was to come. Unfortunately, since our horses were at the brand new colony, our cavalrymen had nothing to ride on, but at least they had their cool hats and their nice rifles. Their commander Kaiser, however, did have a mount, which I thought was nice, I suppose. The enemy soldiers began surrounding our front entrance from the eastern and northern sides, respectively. We were very brave, but we were not foolish. We knew that the odds were highly stacked against us, so we began running inside our fortification, trying to shut the doors behind us so the enemies couldn't come through, which, to be honest, we struggled to do initially, but eventually we did get them closed and we were safe for the moment. Our men immediately began trying to prepare for the British to burst through the doors at any moment. As we continued firing our mortars at them, we had riflemen set up in every corner. We also had managed to bring some of our cannons inside as well. And around this point, the enemies finally began destroying some of our torches and beating on the walls of our fortification. Lucky enough for us, though, one of the groups, after losing many of their members to us as well as our spike traps, decided to flee. 2 more to go. One of these particular 2 groups still had the governor, and Wiggly Snout was a vicious bastard. He was also quite intelligent as well. He led his men to the front entrance, but around this time, luckily, a second group began to flee after getting killed on many of our spike traps. And I must say, I don't think we've made a better investment in American defenses and security than these spike traps. These things have saved our asses many a time. The governor's group of soldiers, though, began beating on our walls and tearing down our defenses as best they could. At one point, though, the governor and Henry were so close, yet the governor had no idea. For Henry swore that if these walls were not between the 2 of him, he would rip the governor's heart out while he watched. Or something like that. We would continue firing our mortars at them the entire time, but around this point I realized that these were just completely ineffective and or inaccurate, so we decided to move all of our troops to the eastern side of the city. There was a lesser enemy presence on the northeastern entrance, giving us the perfect opportunity to pop out of that entrance in a turtle formation with guns blazing and killing everyone we saw. Or, you know, I mean, at least that was the plan, but look, it seems to be working for the most part. Besides, we can't let our spike traps have all the fun now, can we? After a few moments of blasting every British soldier we saw into oblivion, they eventually decided to give up and run away. Which I must add also included Governor Wiggly Snout. That vile son of a bitch managed to wiggle his way out of our hands. And he'll no doubt be back with a much larger and stronger army. But for the time being, we must worry about our own. We have many injured soldiers. Throughout the entire course of the battle, though, somehow we only managed to lose one man, which was obviously one more than we had hoped to lose at all. His sacrifice was extremely brave, yet still very horrific. Yes, yes indeed. Even though we only lost one man, many of our men were extremely injured and were also scarred by the horrors of war here today. For though we did not lose many of our soldiers, there was a massive loss of life for the enemies, and this will no doubt create irreversible psychological damage for our men. And I must ask myself, at what point does it end? But now with the ever-looming threat of that massive raid over with, we can finally focus back on our other colony as well. Well, truthfully, we're only going to focus on them for a hot moment because they have all of our pack animals as well as our horses for our cavalrymen, and we need to send them all the way back to Rats Valley. It has been requested by President Henry that Valentine himself bring all the pack animals and horses back to Rats Valley, for they had something in store for him once he returned. So naturally, of course, Valentine rounded up all the animals and began heading home. However, damn near immediately setting foot onto the road, he was ambushed by the Bullfrogs. It was only one communist Bullfrog warrior, however. But with this warrior much bigger and stronger than Valentine, he had a genius idea. He would mount one of the stallions and begin riding around on it, firing his musket at the warrior until eventually he did manage to finally kill the son of a bitch. Good work, Valentine. That's some mighty fine shooting you done there. And now, hopefully, with all the ambushes finally concluded, Valentine would continue his journey all the way back to Rats Valley with all the horses and pack animals and yada yada. While waiting on Valentine to return home, I couldn't help but notice all of these corpses, and I wish we had someone designated to haul all these corpses, like a designated corpse hauler or something like that. That may give me an idea, though we'll have to see where it goes. For the time being, Valentine has finally returned home with all of our animals. He trucked them right through the city and then took them to their pen, of course, where he would drop them off promptly. And of course, after dropping off all of the animals, he would quickly speak with President Henry about what exactly it was that they had in store for him. Turns out, President Henry has decided to give Valentine something of a promotion based on a comment by our good friend Junior Research Cherosing 9392. I apologize, I butchered your username. But you, my friend, have left several comments requesting that Valentine be given a spot as a designated corpse hauler, some position such as this, so I have decided to grant this request, if you will. And now Valentine holds a spot as a designated corpse hauler. Of course, he has a beautiful new uniform as well as a beautiful new weapon. I decided to give him an all-black uniform. I thought it fitting, as though he's something of an undertaker. And of course, his new pistol has a nice little sharp end on it. That way he can poke the corpses with it and see if they're actually dead or if they're just playing possum. And of course, for good measure, I gave him a cute little mustache as well. I thought it very distinguished and fitting for the character. But of course, with that complete, it's time to let Valentine just go ahead and do his duties as the designated corpse hauler. It would appear that this one is indeed dead. Go ahead and haul it out of here, Valentine. Thank you very much. And now, of course, with a designated corpse hauler, our city should run much more efficiently and very smoothly. But of course, that does remind me that we still have a lot of work to do at the brand new colony, and one of the biggest things that we need to work on over there is our sleeping situation. We don't really have any efficient or effective barracks over there just yet, so we're going to try to build some of those. Now, of course, at this new colony, we have a lot less people living here, so I thought to myself, those barracks are going to take up a lot less room, so maybe we just give them bigger rooms overall. It's going to make them happier, so we did. We even ended up giving the two slaves we have over here some some very cozy little rooms in their very own slave barrack, and I must say that they really seem to enjoy them. Now, around this time back at Rats Valley, we ended up having a French combat supplier, which was honestly perfect, as a few days ago we just slaughtered a bunch of people and had a bunch of rifles laying around to sell to them. As well, of course, as the weapons we already had from previous raids, so we began selling all of these to them, as many as we could, making some pretty easy and fast money. Easy and fast money, I might add, that we would then begin storing in our beautiful and very secure bank that we had built last episode. But it is also quite horrendous, so I decided we should probably try to beautify it at least a little bit. And though it isn't perfectly gorgeous or anything like that, I think it turned out fairly well. I think the flags on the front are a nice touch. Now, also thus far behind the bank we've been burying our dead, so I thought maybe we turn this area into something of a cemetery, and then I realized that there's a lot of stone back here, so maybe we turn half of it into a cemetery, and then the other half maybe we begin making some type of crypt or something. So of course we immediately began work on a giant crypt or mausoleum or whatever you want to call it, where we're going to also try to bury our dead, not necessarily just anybody, but normally the more important dead. Of course, having a crypt or mausoleum inside the mountain would protect from grave robbers and things like that, but not only that, it would also protect our burial grounds and whatnot, if you will, from attacks and things like that when we're having battles inside the city. If we get raided and they manage to get in the city, this will keep burial grounds and sarcophagi and things like that from being too badly damaged, if at all. Hello and welcome back, all of you super fine ass specimens, to the RimWorld Continental Army series. Obviously, as you've probably noticed, it's been about, I want to say, 2 weeks since we've uploaded an episode of the RimWorld Continental Army. I'm getting a little bit burnt out, or at least I was, but I'm ready to come back and I'm having a good time. And as you'll see in today's episode, I have a few new mods and ideas and things like that to kind of refresh the series and just give it a little more flavor. Huzzah! Would you look at that? Speaking of flavor, there's nothing more flavorful than killing a bunch of filthy bullfrogs. And I am just ever so darn tickled to kill some, what are they holding? Well, that's a very strange looking musket, and it also fires very quickly. How bad could it be? There's still a bunch of dumbass bullfrog warrior humanoid creatures. I'm sure it'll be fine, nothing to be concerned with. I mean, sure, they had clubs last episode, and now they have assault rifles. I mean, we'll probably be fine. Unfortunately, the raid came in right on the same side that Valentine was trying to clean up bodies on, so he had to make a rush all the way back to our fortification, but luckily he did do so unscathed. Our other soldiers very quickly ran outside to our defenses, especially Jonathan and the other sharpshooters, who were very crucial during this battle as they were the only ones who had such a far reach. And the reach of their sniper rifles gave us a massive advantage over the frogs and their assault rifles. Because of course, though their assault rifles had a much higher damage and shot very quickly, they couldn't reach us near as far as we could reach them. Regardless though, these assault rifles and these frogs were still a massive threat. This was a very crucial and dangerous battle for us. And though as much as I hate to say it, the frogs fought very valiantly, very bravely as well, I might add. As brave as you could, fighting a bunch of people with muskets with an assault rifle, of course. After several of them had fallen though, they did begin to flee, and I began to wonder to myself, was this truly a raid, or was this a test of their new weapons and armor? Because for you see, even though they hadn't managed to kill any of our soldiers, they did manage to injure several of them, giving them some important feedback on how their weapons operate. To find out more information, we thought we would ask one of the locals. One of the frogs that had been down during the battle was still alive, so we thought we might be real nice and we're gonna torture him. But of course, before we began slicing the webs between his little amphibian toes and pouring salt into them, we would need to heal him from his previous wounds during the battle. Of course, after doing so, word was then sent to Cosmic. After stripping the frog of his attire, Cosmic would then enter the cell with his charm and his charming tools and ways of making these frogs squeal. Ah yes, Cosmic old boy, you've done it again. Turns out that the bullfrogs and the British have some type of secret pact ongoing now. Due to their mutual hatred of us here, it turns out that the British are actually supplying them with gunpowder and other types of weapons, and through the sorcery and black magic of communism, these bullfrogs have created assault rifles. But even though these weapons have been created from disgusting communism, it made me begin to wonder if we could use our American ingenuity opportunity to reverse engineer these weapons into something more free and American, something more democratic. So we have assigned Kenzaki to actually try and reverse engineer one of these weapons and see what she can do with it, see what kind of magic she can work on it. After some time, Kenzaki had finally finished the project, and in front of President Henry as well as our other leaders, she brought forth a brand new weapon, a much more American weapon. She laid the weapon on the ground so that they may inspect it, and I present to you the most free, democratic American weapon I could think of, the M16 assault rifle. This bad boy has red, white, and blue running through its chambers, and it is more than ready to be tested against our enemies. However, who would test such a weapon? President Henry decided since Kenzaki is the one who technically created it from the communist weapons, she should be the one to wield it. And I felt that this would also be the perfect opportunity to give Kenzaki a better place in our military. Since Henry is now the president, we don't have a general over the Continental Army. Thus, this honor has been bestowed upon Kenzaki. Now, since the founding of New Marsai, as well as us splitting our soldiers up into different groups and types of soldiers and things like that, our army is quite a bit smaller. But Kenzaki would be in charge of these soldiers as well as all other soldiers in the entire army. So we only thought it fair that she and our cavalry units would be sent out to attack a nearby British outpost where the British as well as the Bullfrogs were conversing. Now, of course, naturally, as you probably imagine, this is not going to completely stop either faction from attacking us, but this is going to make the raids less frequent as we're getting rid of an outpost they've been using to attack nearby. Now, in the meantime, while they're traveling there, at New Marsai, we actually have our very first harvest of smoke leaf. And as I've mentioned previously, this beautiful little cash crop is going to make us a lot of dinero, a lot of moolah, but first we're going to have to start rolling this shit up into joints. To begin with, we're only going to have 2 crafting spots where 2 of our colonists will begin doing this. Eventually, of course, I'd like to add on to that though and have 3, 4, maybe even 5. And with that though, our very first smoke leaf joint. Hopefully the first of many, many, many smoke leaf joints that we can sell to all of our colonial allies. But it was around this time though that we had finally arrived at the British and Bullfrog outpost, and we were preparing ourselves, preparing to smash them into the dust, of course. Generals Kenzaki and Kaiser were preparing their men for battle. Though they did not have a lot of soldiers, they had something much better, a good plan. And of course, by a good plan, I mean I'm completely joking. The only idea that I had here was to maybe try and use our cavalry units to flank the enemy, and I kinda, sorta, maybe did that in the beginning, and it really didn't work, and I was afraid someone was going to die, so we kinda just grouped them all back together. And of course, this seemed to work out a lot better for us, and eventually, after beating the absolute shit out of their little asses like a damn drum, they eventually began to flee. With the ever-looming threat of the Bullfrogs and the British defeated, it was finally time for us to enter their little outpost here and see what's going on within, see what they house here. Kenzaki and Kaiser rushed into the outpost, and they had no fear as the new assault rifle that we had created was a bit of a problem solver. Though unfortunately there was hardly anything interesting within. There were a few meals, and then we stumbled upon a table with several chairs. It looks to have been a meeting room, and then we also spotted a bunch of jade in the corner of the room. It did occur to us that this jade is most likely payment from the Bullfrogs to the British for the supplies on the recent raid that happened back at Rats Valley. So naturally, of course, we loaded it all up and began to take it back home with us. And of course, as you can imagine, the journey is going to take quite a while before we finally returned home, so we'll check back in on them in a minute. Now at this point in the episode, you may be asking yourself, just as I was while playing, where is Beardy? I haven't seen Beardy in quite a while. Well, my friends, unfortunately, I must be the bearer of bad news. It turns out that at some point during one of the battles in last episode, Beardy was severely injured. He had his spine shattered and has been lying in the hospital ever since. And honestly, I'm not very sure what to do with Beardy. Because of our current tech level, we don't have any bionic spines or anything like that, obviously. However, I do know of a mod that adds wheelchairs, so if a colonist does have a shattered spine, they can still use that to move around, so if that's something you might be interested in seeing, be sure to let me know. Also, real quick, something I wanted to mention, I believe it must have happened during the battle last episode, but the giant statue of Henry was destroyed at some point, or stolen, or something like that, so unfortunately, we no longer have that, but that's alright, as I am going to place an order to create a brand new one. Sure, this brand new one's not going to be made out of any ancient stolen Bullfrog jade, but it's okay, we'll make it out of stone. It'll be much more durable. Besides, it's probably going to be best for us to start saving jade and silver and things like that, especially after we begin selling smoke leaf to Colonial factions so we can make more and more money. Speaking of which, of course, just before heading home, Kanzaki and her men would actually stop in at the local French settlement and begin selling off everything that we had collected, such as prisoners and weapons and basically everything. And then they finally began making their way all the way back to Rats Valley. And of course, some time later, they had finally arrived back home. Our heroes, our trailblazers, really opening up the path to future technologies through these assault rifles. I mean, sure, we had stolen the technology, and it's not technically our invention, but who gives a shit? Nobody has to know. We're not going to tell them that part. Fortune and destiny favor the bold, and unfortunately for the Bullfrogs and British, they're just not bold enough to win. And that's why we're going to trample the shit out of them. But of course, in the meantime, New Marsai needs a lot of work, and I'm talking about a lot of work. The type of work that, you know, a community can get done, but they would get it done a lot better if they had someone to lead them, like a governor of sorts. Of course, though, some amazing leader like a governor is going to need somewhere to live, so we began tearing down a lot of the old structures that were already here and began concocting plans to build a governor's mansion. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any plans this episode to actually make anyone governor. I thought that it may be fun if I let you guys in the comment section down below give me your top picks for who should be governor and your reasoning as to why. If there's something that really catches my eye, or if your reasoning really makes sense and I just, quite frankly, really enjoy it, I will go with what you say. Now, with that being said, I do have a lot of the next episode actually already recorded and things like that, and a little bit of it edited, so you may not see the governor next episode. It might be the episode after or something like that, but just continue leaving your comments so you may just catch my eye. Now, once the governor's mansion was completed, it was time for us to actually focus a bit on infrastructure. Something that we haven't had at New Marsai at all this entire time is a good functioning road, so we decided that we would use some packed dirt, some light packed dirt, as well as some wood to build a road around the colony. Because of course, as I always say, ensuring proper mobility around the colony is going to be crucial to defending said colony as well as ensuring efficient work and whatnot. And now, of course, last but not least, previous episodes I have mentioned how I like to turn this small area here into something of a little bit of a park, a very small park or something of that sort, somewhere they could relax and enjoy themselves and just preserve this ancient history and these ancient ruins. So that is exactly what I decided to do. I ended up using slate cobblestone here, so you can still tell the difference between the ancient ruins as well as the newer stuff that we're building, and it won't be so damn dirty all the time. And I understand that some of you guys may feel that this is unnecessary, a bit trivial and things like that, and I can definitely understand that, but I do also know that a lot of you like these more story elements in our series, and as do I. I like to give the people of New Marsai their own story, their own identity, their own semi-culture, that sort of thing. And in the end, I do think that this very small leisure area slash kind of park street turned out very well. It is actually kind of ugly, but in a beautiful sort of way, in my opinion. It gives some much needed culture and beautiful detail to New Marsai, as well as the people who live here. For these ancient ruins and statues and structures and whatnot, they may not be our history, but this is our home. And though we cannot bring back the ancient civilization that created these ruins and give them their home back or anything like that, we can ensure that their culture lives on through us and becomes a part of our culture and who we are as a people. Welcome back, one and all, to the RimWorld Continental Army series. And of course, also welcome back to our gorgeous, bodacious colony of New Marsai. One of the two gorgeous, bodacious, beautiful colonies of the American Empire thus far, where we are currently rolling up a whole bunch of smoke leaf joints so we can finally begin selling them to our colonial allies for a nice big profit of silver. But of course, we don't only want New Marsai to be known for how high it can get you off its products, we also want it to be known for its beautiful inbred boar population. Yes indeed, my friends, at this point we have a pretty large population of domesticated wild boars. And they've been inbreeding in this pen for quite a while, so long that it's almost time for us to either slaughter them or begin selling them. So So at some point we'll need to deal with that, but for now we'll let them continue inbreeding. Because at the moment we have much bigger fish to fry. There appears to have spawned a faction contention near both of our colonies. This is essentially an area where a large amount of resources are and many factions are competing for them. So naturally, of course, we decided to try and get there first. Because of course there is almost definitely going to be some sort of threat there, we decided to send a group from Rats Valley as well as New Marsai to meet up, join together, and then go there. However, though, to our surprise, after arriving, there were a few corpses, but there was actually no threat, none at all. It appeared to be some sort of Prussian caravan that maybe had been attacked days ago, but that also didn't make sense because the resources were still here. And of course also their camp was still somewhat intact. Oddly enough, one of the items/resources they had with them was a beautiful silver statue of a French noblewoman. It was a bit of an odd find, but we decided to give it to the group from New Marsai as they are a colony with close ties to our French allies. Of course, the other valuables and resources would be taken back to Rats Valley. But this also does beg the question, what happened to these Prussian soldiers and their caravan? Perhaps this disgusting amphibian knows. Only one way to find out. Oh, never mind. Looks like the only thing he's spilling is his blood. Perhaps then maybe we could take a quick peek at the bodies. Ah, there we are. Yes, the plague. The plague will get you every time if you let it. It would appear even their poor Muffalo was taken by this sickness as well. Well, unfortunately, with the entire caravan dead, no one to save and no one to fight, we decided to send both groups back to their corresponding colonies. Of course, with the corresponding resources for each colony as well, such as the statue. Ah yes, which reminds me, speaking of statues, Lindman was just about to finish up the gorgeous statue, a replacement statue of President Henry for the one that was made of jade that was either destroyed, stolen, or maybe we lost it, I'm not sure. And you know, I will be the first to say this one isn't near as beautiful in terms of beauty stat or color or anything as the one made of jade, but it is still quite gorgeous. In fact, I thought the statue, the rose bushes, and just the setup in general over at Rats Valley was so gorgeous that we would try and do something similar over at New Marsai with the silver statue we had found. And in my own personal opinion, I think it turned out to look pretty darn good, a nice homage to our French allies as well. But of course, now that we're done decorating for the moment, I asked you guys last episode if you'd like for me to add the wheelchair mod so we can get Beardy moving around again, and we got an outstanding yes. So we are going to create a wheelchair for Beardy. Now I have also added this mod to the list of mods, which is in every episode video description. If you guys would like to play along or find those, I always put the mods in every video description for that video. But without further ado, I give to you a wonderfully crafted wooden wheelchair just for Beardy. And of course, as you can see, he is moving around just fine. Granted, he's quite a bit slower than he would be if his spine was not shattered and he was walking around, but given the fact that it is shattered, he's doing pretty well for himself. And of course, I would love for you guys to continue giving me your feedback as to who should be the governor of New Marsai. A lot of people are saying Beardy, and I'm kind of leaning towards Beardy right now, but if you guys have any other better suggestions as to who that should be, please continue leaving those, as you may just change my mind. But of course, that will come in due time, possibly next episode. For now, it would appear that we have a bulk goods trader at New Marsai as well. This of course seemed like the perfect opportunity to try and sell to them all of our smoke leaf joints, leaves if they're willing to buy them, and our hogs. Unfortunately, they would not buy any of our wild boars for whatever reason, so I suppose we just grew them to eat them, but they did end up purchasing all of our smoke leaf joints and I believe all of our leaves as well. Now of course, we also ended up purchasing some gold, jade, fuel for our cannonballs, but most importantly, we also bought a gorgeous outfit for our up-and-coming governor of New Marsai. Now of course, though the trade caravan was Prussian, this was an authentic French uniform and a hyper-weave top hat, nothing but the finest for the new governor of New Marsai when they come around. Something else that we had bought for the new governor though, once elected, is a Yorkshire Terrier with the wonderfully known name of Butter. Butter here, of course, was not exactly a French dog, but he was a genocidal destroyer of planets. Or, you know, like a really good boy. Oh, what a good boy, Butter. Oh, Anyhow, though, all this talk of butter made me think that we should probably check our food supply back at Rats Valley, and after I did so, I thought to myself, hot damn, we have a lot of pumpkins. And then when I say a lot of pumpkins, I mean we had like so many pumpkins, our food storage room was chock full, and then there were plenty lying on the ground. We had a lot. So what does one do when they have an overabundance of the orange goodness known as pumpkins? Why, they share, of course. They share with their allies, their friends, their buddies, or in our case, maybe they share with their enemies. Whoa, Rat Daddy, what are you going on about? What are you yapping about, my boy? Well, my friends, look, I've realized that in the last episode or so, the Bullfrogs, with just a little bit of help from the British, have really made some very dangerous advancements. Advancements that to them are going to be crucial for overtaking us and eventually the entire world, because that is definitely what these communist bastards want. So, would it not be better if we were allies of the British, if we were to team up with all the other colonial powers and fight off the Bullfrogs? I know, I hear you. It is a dream that is outlandish, and we would have to team up with the tea drinkers, but it very well may be worth it. So to extend a olive branch, or in this case a pumpkin branch, no, but for real, we're taking all of our pumpkins to a local British settlement to offer them as a gift, as well as a few other things such as tobacco products. But of course, as our caravan is traveling there, we're once again putting some more focus on our smoke leaf cash crop. Something that we need is a dedicated storage and production building for smoke leaf leaves and joints. And of course, as you can imagine, that is exactly what we decided to build. Truly, I want New Marsai to be a booming economy, and it is growing much faster, in my opinion at least, than Rats Valley in terms of economics. In terms of actual buildings and whatnot, not so much, mostly because we have a much smaller population though. But of course, we hope to change that as well by having our colonists have babies and recruiting new people. Now, I will say, if we're waiting our colonists to breed, it'll take an extremely long time, so maybe we end up sending more slaves here or something like that to just try and increase the population, but we don't want to have something like a penal colony here because the slaves very well would overtake our colonists. But of course, that is a problem for the very near future. As for the present, we have almost arrived at our designated settlement to offer them plenty of pumpkins and tobacco and basically everything we have to make friends. Now, of course, they mostly seemed excited about the tea, the coffee, the tobacco products and things like that, but the pumpkins were a nice little cherry on top, and after it was all said and done, we had become allies with the British. Truly, today will go down in history as an amazing, wonderful day full of new allies and friendships. History in the making. And now, with their mission of peace and gift-giving a success, they would finally begin returning back to Rats Valley, where they would give the good news to President Henry and the other leaders. However, unfortunately, back at New Marsai, there was some other big news going on. There was apparently a raid by the Blue Gorge Union, not just any raid. They were planning on breaching our city walls, which of course was extremely unfortunate since our city walls were the only things keeping them from us, and especially since they had us outnumbered, we were a little anxious. But our morale and our spirits would not falter. We would stand true and we would stand strong against this armada. As they began flooding into the city of New Marsai, we began trying to make strategic retreat after strategic retreat, hoping and praying that as they backed us into a corner into our own city, we would end up killing enough of them to make them flee. And truly, of course, I will be the first to admit that in the beginning of this, it wasn't looking very good for us, and I was scared that everyone was going to die, but luckily, as we were making what I thought to be our final stand near the entrance of our city, the majority of the enemies were actually just attempting to destroy our buildings and whatnot, which gave us something of an advantage as they were coming at us somewhat one by one. And so in the end, we did take a brutal beating, and I was extremely scared we were all going to die, but we ended up winning, and the enemy began to flee. Now, don't get me wrong, this was truly a triumphant victory. Some might even say a bit of a miracle, but we paid a very heavy cost. Of the few colonists that we actually have that live in New Marsai, most of them were extremely injured, and 2 of them were actually dead. It also very much saddens me to tell you that one of the colonists that actually died during the battle was a personal and a fan favorite, Muscles. Muscles was a very brave soldier, and he's been with us for many episodes at this point, but unfortunately no more. We of course would begin taking prisoners as soon as we could ensure no more of our members would die. This would help replenish our ranks, but it would not give us back those who were taken from us. And of course, speaking of which, we dug 2 small, shallow graves to bury our dead. This is the start of the cemetery to be here in New Marsai. And now, of course, as you remember me saying earlier, as we were taking on a good portion of the enemies that were raiding us, the others were destroying our city. Well, as you can see, this was very much true. The city was absolutely trashed. There was blood, trash, guts, dust in every single corner of this city. We had walls and buildings destroyed. Luckily, there were no massive fires breaking out. But of course, that would be about the only good news that we had after the raid. Well, that I suppose, and the fact that our noble Frenchwoman statue that we had found earlier in the episode hadn't been destroyed, nor were the rose bushes around her. They were just smeared in blood of our enemies and our friends. But honestly, as bad as things were, we could have gotten off a lot worse. It's honestly for the best that they destroyed most of the city, otherwise the entire horde of tribespeople would have been attacking us, and we almost definitely would not have survived that. We most definitely need to up our manpower here at New Marsai for raids like that, but also we need to try and up our defenses. We hardly have any spike traps around the city. It may be best to put them around the walls, basically all of the walls if need be. But of course, when something bad happens, things have to get worse. It would appear that we now have an infection, and the infection appears to be in poor old Sai's right shoulder. We quickly forced him to lie down, but even now his immunity is a good bit less than his actual infection, so hopefully we don't have to cut his arm off. That is always a possibility though. We attempted to begin tending to him as fast as we could to try and get his immunity up as fast as it could, so there is the possibility that maybe we won't have to, maybe we will, I don't know, we'll see. New Marsai is going to need a lot of work to get it and its people back up on its feet, so like I've mentioned, make sure you guys are letting me know who you think would be a great leader, a great governor for New Marsai, and we'll most likely try to do the election in the next episode. Welcome back once again, my beloved friends, to our RimWorld Continental Army series. We're currently just kind of chilling out in New Marsai. Everybody's healing and or bleeding out and trying to repair their city. If you remember, as of the last episode, we got our asses almost totally kicked by a bunch of tribespeople. Well, my friends, of course, today we hope to try and ensure that we're able to prevent such another raid, and one of the ways that we plan on doing so is by electing a governor, who indeed will be revealed very shortly. Now, before we get to that though, Sai had an infection at the end of last episode, and unfortunately that is still the case. However, with that being said, since we saw him last, he is getting a teeny tiny slight advantage in his immunity over the infection, and here after a while you'll notice that he's fine, so don't worry about him. He's fine, it's fine, we're fine, everything's fine. Well, not exactly fine. We still have a lot of work to do here on the city with repairing our walls, our defenses, as well as just buildings in general that were destroyed during the raid. And as you might imagine, it's quite hard doing all of these things when many of our members are very injured. And also very difficult because they don't have a leader. So, people, I present to you the new governor of New Marsai. Yes, indeed, it is Beardy. Now, the majority of you guys seem to really want Beardy as the governor. I have taken note of the other characters that a lot of you wanted as governor, and they may have a shot in an upcoming election or something like that, or for some other positions. But it seemed to me that the vast majority of people thought that Beardy should be the governor of New Marsai, and I couldn't agree more, honestly. He is one of our earliest members. He's actually not a founding member, which shows other members that no matter where they come from, they can achieve great goals. And just as well, nobody has given more for their country, except our dead comrades, than Beardy, who had his spine shattered in combat. Okay, and also the fact that he had his spine shattered means he's not very good at crafting, building, fighting, anything else, so this is almost kind of like a retirement for him as well. So just like in real life, his position of power is basically a glorified nursing home retirement. But of course, we wouldn't expect Governor Beardy to travel the road to New Marsai alone, so we have Cameo, I forget what this guy's name is, but he is now Beardy's personal guard, so who gives a shit how you pronounce his name? He's probably going to die at some point. But aren't we all going to die at some point? I don't know, I'm trying to make this happy again, but let's send them off to New Marsai. The two of them quickly jumped onto the road together and began heading out that way, but the road to New Marsai was very long, the journey very far, and there were numerous threats along the way. Now, normally when you have an elected official like this tourists who's the brand new governor of a city, you would probably cart them out in a beautiful parade and all this lights and fireworks and some other shit, but in this case we wanted to keep the caravan very small so that they wouldn't be seen by anyone looking to ambush them. Unfortunately though, this still happened. 'Twas the Blue Gorge Union, and they actually offered to let us go if we would give up some of our supplies, but obviously we were not going to do this, so we refused and decided to fight them off. Thankfully, this appeared to be a lone bandit from the Blue Gorge Union. They had no idea that this was the governor of New Marsai, obviously, so it was only one person who was easily dispatched by us. But of course I used the word easily very lightly here, as Beardy did take one hell of a beating. This might have been due to the fact that his guard was much faster than him, and I didn't really account for that, so the guard basically left him to fend for himself for a while. But of course he was still alive, and I suppose that that is the most important part. Now after the ambush was over, the two of them began heading back to New Marsai, but back at Rats Valley, we had a raid from the Blue Gorge Union. Now this time around, the raid was much larger than the one that we saw last episode attacking New Marsai. However, this time around, these raiders didn't appear to be attempting to break through our walls, possibly because the walls at Rats Valley are much stronger and sturdier. Or just because that's how the random events of the game works anyway. We would immediately send our entire army out to the front entrance of Rats Valley, that way we could prepare for this massive raid. Thanks to Jonathan and his sharpshooters squad, they had a very far range and were able to hit several of the enemies before they even got close enough to notice us. Unfortunately, of course, as we saw last episode, this is a luxury that New Marsai does not have, as they just have your standard militia or soldier with whatever kind of weapon they could carry. But this raid did give me some ideas for the soldiers of New Marsai and ways that we could better equip them for things like this. Now, of course, with that being said, this raid here at Rats Valley was not easy peasy. We did manage to get two of the raiding parties to flee, but there was still a third, and we had to make a retreat inside our base. Of course, this ended up giving us the upper hand because as they were trying to funnel through the entrance of our base, we just began pelting the absolute shit out of them with bullets, killing them damn near instantly, and eventually they decided to flee as well. And of course, with the threat neutralized, we were good to go ahead and begin cleaning up all the massive mess that they had made and begin tending to our wounded, and of course also taking several prisoners. Now, 2 out of the 3 prisoners that we took in we could recruit, but the third had unwavering loyalty, so we would end up having to enslave them. Now this is going to be 2 new recruits and 1 new slave for New Marsai, as well as the frog that we're trying to enslave as well, that we'll most likely send there too. Unfortunately though, during the battle we did end up having 1 casualty. Our poor friend Nose, who just recently joined us here at Rats Valley, ended up getting her socks rocked and she died there on the battlefield. Naturally, of course, we would take her to our national cemetery here at Rats Valley that we built a few episodes and bury her. Now with that taken care of though, I'm realizing that we are taking a lot of casualties, or at least more than I would like to, obviously, and many of our soldiers are getting injured, and I would like to just try to reduce those numbers if I could. So to do so, I've decided that we should begin trying to research further into defensive technologies and offensive technologies. Of course, there was no one better for the job than our General Kenzaki, who immediately began researching into said technologies. And then, some time later, Governor Beardy had finally arrived at his brand new city. He and his personal guard rolled right up to the front entrance and went straight in. Nobody really noticed him, and they didn't really know why he was in a wheelchair. Last they saw him, he was walking around just fine. But it looks like President Henry has left the great honor of explaining to the good people of New Marsai why they're not being governed by their own person, and they're being governed by someone from Rats Valley to Beardy, which I suppose he's excited about. Oh, I'm sure that the great people of New Marsai won't give a shit that they're not being governed by one of their own and that it's some outsider from the capital city. I mean, when in the US's history has there ever been something like a revolution or a civil war? You know what? Don't answer that. Regardless though, Beardy is here now, and he is ready to begin his governing duties over this beautiful city, first of which of course is going to be working on repairs and getting this place back in operating order. But don't get Beardy wrong, just because he has a shattered spine does not mean he's above getting down and dirty in the dirt with his colleagues working on this city. He is a governor of action, not just talk. One of the first orders of business, of course, is going to be getting rid of this drab gray flooring that's in the dining hall and the kitchen. It's horrible for morale, and we need some wood and stone flooring that is beautiful and is going to help everyone not mentally break. Or at least that's the idea. Now back at the capital city, Kanzaki has been working diligently on her research and has finally come up with something known as Gatling guns. It would seem that this technology is somewhat based on her very own assault rifle, very loosely of course, as it's not an automatic weapon, it is hand cranked, but it's kind of automatic and it's also mobile. Sort of. But of course, quite possibly the most important thing is that these weapons are going to give the average American soldier at least a fraction of the power of Kanzaki's assault rifle, which is more than what we currently have anyhow. However, though, I did decide to do a bit of a demonstration with Kaiser Wilhelm here and Kanzaki, and as you can see, the Gatling guns are very, very much slower than her assault rifle, but that's okay. Since these weapons are fairly valuable and powerful, though, we've decided to give half of them to New Marsai. They honestly need them more than we do here at Rats Valley, as they are struggling to defend themselves with such low population. But just as well, we have so many of the communist Bullfrog assault rifles lying around, we've decided to send many of those over to New Marsai as well so they can test them out, see if maybe they magically turn them into communist, or maybe they work as normal rifles. I suppose, of course, that remains to be seen, but we also sent them some art and some other luxury items to try and help boost morale over there since a bunch of their people died and, you know, stuff like that. We were just thinking a few sculptures, Gatling guns, assault rifles, some nice chairs, a table, some art and stuff like that might make them think about all their dead friends a little bit less, maybe. And you know what? I think we did it. I don't think they've thought about all their dead friends and family in at least 2 minutes, so I would call that a success. Speaking of success as well, it would appear that some of our allies are attempting to successfully attack the Bullfrogs. We didn't know which ally was trying to attack them, or honestly, even if they were our allies that were attacking, but we decided to go and chip in. Besides, this would be the perfect opportunity for the soldiers of New Marsai to try out their commie assault rifles. We arrived not long after that at a massive Bullfrog base, and it would appear that our French allies were the ones attempting to attack them. Though, unfortunately for our French allies, it would appear that they were severely outgunned as well as outnumbered. Well then, I suppose it's a good thing that we Americans have shown up once again to save the day yet again. We would immediately begin attempting to use the communist Bullfrog assault rifles against them, fighting fire with fire mano a mano. But honestly, if I could be quite frank, as we continued trying to kill as many as possible and many of our people were getting injured and whatnot, I realized that the French numbers were falling faster and faster. Soon it would only be us that were fighting the Bullfrogs and we would be severely outnumbered. And then tragedy struck once more. Robin had died. Robin had not bled to death, but Robin had actually been affected by the Bullfrog acid which ate away at his skin, causing him severe pain up until his death. Unfortunately, I realized at this point that we were losing this battle. For the first time in this entire series, we were truly beginning to lose. Up until this point, we have always managed to find some type of way to defeat a raid or fight back an enemy, but not this time. Our allies were dropping like flies and one of our very own had died. It was time for us to go back home. And for the first time in the founding of our proud nation, we would have to retreat and leave our remaining French allies to perish. There was nothing more that we could do except run away. Some time later, the caravan had finally returned back home, beaten, broken, and humiliated, carrying around poor Robin's corpse. Obviously, of course, one of the first things on our list here to do was to bury Robin after entering the city, and of course, give Governor Beardy the horrific news as to what happened. Now, it was around this time, though, that the soldiers began to wonder as to why Governor Beardy would send them out with the communist assault rifles, especially since Robin was a contender for Governor Beardy's political position. The seeds of doubt, distrust, and mutiny have now been sown, and it's very hard to say if anything at all can stop them from growing. Even as Governor Beardy rubs elbows with his people, doing manual labor together with them, they begin to wonder what his true motives are. I suppose that only time shall tell that tale, though. In the meantime, though, we have our very first friendly British caravan entering New Marsai. It appears that they're a bulk goods trader, which was absolutely perfect, as we had plenty of smoke leaf for them. Unfortunately, they didn't have anything interesting for us to purchase, purchase, but that was quite alright as they had plenty of silver to fork over for the cash crop. Unfortunately though, all this smoke leaf production has actually left our food production and growth a bit lacking. Not to worry though, we are a bit low on food, but since we grew up all those wild boars and nobody wants to buy them, it was high time that we slaughter them and make them into something useful. Such as something like stews, or soups, or maybe even cheeseburgers, hog burgers, pork burgers, something. Regardless though, the meat we received from our wild boars was invaluable to us. Nothing like some good old food in the belly. And of course this would also allow us to continue producing plenty of smoke leaf before we would need to change our production back over to food before winter. Because of course, my friends, winter is coming, and with it, the cold, dark, snowy nights. Hello one and all, how is it hanging? It is I, your Rat Daddy, and today we are yet again back in the RimWorld Continental Army series, my babies. Now look, in today's episode I'm starting out hot and heavy. We actually have a caravan with Kenzaki and a few horses who is going to go and buy some resources. Said resources are actually chem fuel, and we need chem fuel for a new weapon that we're cooking up in today's episode. After arriving at the nearby Prussian settlement, we quickly grabbed the chem fuel, and we would also end up purchasing one of their slaves who would actually join us as a colonist. Because realistically, we need all the manpower we can get, we also bought President Henry a nice telescope, but I forgot to show it. Then Kenzaki and the new colonists began making their way back home. As they were on their way back home, we ended up having a group of sheep join us here very randomly, and I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't too excited about having new mouths to feed. So I made the executive decision to slaughter every single sheep that had joined us, and then we would cut them up and eat them. Ah, the circle of life. Ain't nature just grand? Kenzaki then finally returned back home with our brand new stash of chem fuel for our brand new prototype weapons, and better yet, she also returned with our new colonist. Now as for the new weapons, it has been requested for quite a while that we actually create something of a demolition group, so what we're going to be creating are called Ketchum grenades, basically an early proto form of grenade. Really the only problem with this, we have plenty of resources, we can always buy more chem fuel if we need to make these grenades, but the issue is we don't have enough soldiers to put into this demolition group, so unfortunately to begin with we're only doing 3. Of course, 3 is not a lot by any means, but it is a start to the new group. And finally, after some time, we had all of our grenades completed, as well as our new helmets and backpacks for our demolition soldiers. I also ended up giving them each a revolver pistol, which is slightly more advanced than the flintlock pistols that the other soldiers have been using. I sent the 3 of them out on a practice mission, if you will, to just kind of throw a few grenades at some stones and maybe fire their pistols, and honestly, I was fairly pleased with the results. Unfortunately, it seems the blast radius of the grenades is extremely small, but that's okay since most factions don't really even have grenades yet. And now of course comes the part that everyone loves. I have decided to give these 3 names chosen from your guys' comments. Now I did choose these names randomly, basically just whichever ones caught my eye. Most of them I believe have been commented quite a few times, but of course that isn't what I'm going based on, I'm just randomly choosing them. So if you're a new commenter or whatnot with some names, continue doing that because I will eventually see it and maybe it catches my eye. Now basically immediately after creating these demolition soldiers, I have decided to send them as well as a new slave named Miksu over to New Marsai to kind of reinforce them since they've been getting attacked a lot lately. The hope, of course, being that they'll be able to help New Marsai defend themselves, but also this could be a play by President Henry to try and help reinforce Beardy's claim as governor. Having a few new loyalist soldiers be sent to New Marsai, bringing with them assault rifles, the same type of assault rifles that were given to its citizens last episode, could be a ploy by the president to try and gain favor with the people as well. However, I will say, though these new assault rifles are helping New Marsai defend themselves, they did end up giving us a bit of a scare, for you see, New Marsai, out of the 2 cities, is the one with the most amount of slaves. Since their population is so low, we've been sending so many slaves over here to try and help reinforce. Which means, of course, a few of these slaves are already armed and well seasoned in combat as they've been with us for quite a while. Quite a while meaning that they've had a good bit of time to plan a slave rebellion. All 4 of the slaves of New Marsai have decided to rebel against the American Empire. We would immediately try to come in as fast as possible and squash the flames of rebellion, but they fought back fiercely. Thankfully though, they weren't smart enough to grab the assault rifles on the ground, so they grabbed the outdated technology, giving them a disadvantage. We took down Cades by the monument and then began focusing our attention on the other 3 inside the warehouse. Miksu had already been down, then we took down Wood, and last but not least was Pants. Thankfully though, as I mentioned, none of them picked up any of the assault rifles lying on the ground for whatever reason. If they had, this might have went very differently. And just like that, within a very short period of time, under Governor Beardy's reign, he has had his first Grand Slave Rebellion and also taken down his first Grand Slave Rebellion very easily. Hopefully, for the sake of the slaves, this is their last rebellion. This time we will be gracious and generous and not kill anyone. But next time, they might not be so lucky. As if this wasn't enough though, the very next morning we ended up having a faction assault. The Blue Gorge Union is apparently going to have a massive battle with the Prussians in our territory. And of course, as you can imagine, we are going to step in as soon as possible to try and help our Prussian allies, and also to take a chip out of that damn Blue Gorge Union for what they've done. Oh, that's right, we still haven't forgot the massive raid that tore through the walls of New Marsai and attacked our people viciously. Unfortunately, one of the French traders was riding a very large turtle and was attacked by the tribespeople as he was coming back. And though the battle is very imminent, of course, I thought it was very interesting that not only would we and the Prussians be fighting off the Blue Gorge Union, but the French are here as well. We are the triple threat dream team. Now, if only the British were here, we could stomp out these bastards easily. Unfortunately, the path that the Prussians were taking to do the battle was almost right through our base, so it would take a moment. We and the French would have to fend them off for the time being before they got here. Not that we minded smashing a few tribal heads, of course. Unfortunately, though, the French started getting absolutely wrecked by them. Thank God, though, the Prussian soldiers would arrive shortly thereafter to reinforce our ranks. And they were no strangers to combat. They would charge head first into the carnage of battle and begin taking them on mano a mano. Well, not necessarily, because there's a lot of enemies and a lot of friendlies, but you get what I'm saying. They would use ample opportunities to take cover behind our defenses, working hand in hand with our American soldiers. But of course, make no mistake, even these seasoned soldiers, with our help as well as the French's, were still taking heavy losses on the battlefield. It looked like a sea of blood was running across every sandbag and bush. Finally though, after fighting fiercely and suffering heavy losses themselves, the Blue Gorge Union finally decided to tuck tail and run away, leaving behind massive piles of bodies of their own. Of course, not all of these bodies were corpses. Some of them were still flailing from their wounds and would make great prisoners. With such a massive battle over with, and with it being the first battle where we and 2 of our allies have taken on a common enemy, I want to start naming these battles and maybe using the Days Matter mod to create some holidays. So for this one, what do you guys think the name should be of the battle, and we'll end up naming it. Now, back at Rats Valley, we finally ended up enslaving the disgusting bullfrog warrior known as Norris. This also marks the first time we've enslaved a bullfrog. And I must say, although ugly, hideous, and just horrible all around, his ability to spit acid from his mouth was quite interesting, and just as well his ability to summon bullfrogs at will. These 2 things would actually make him a very valuable asset, but don't tell him that, of course. We still hate him. That and the fact that he has a long jump ability that doesn't really seem to have much of a cooldown. I was a bit skeptical about enslaving him at first, but now I think he is the perfect weapon to use against the bullfrogs. Back once again at New Marsai, I began looking at our slave quarters and thought to myself, for the new slaves, if I were one of them, I would revolt as well. So we really need to try and give them better living conditions, and of course that's what we began working on, to try and beautify their place and honestly just give them some beds and basic necessities. Because of course the happier they are, the better for us, because that means the less likely they are to break and revolt. And since we're recruiting more prisoners into our ranks, I decided that we should probably go ahead and try to work on a few more barracks and residential areas for the upcoming soldiers. And just as well, of course, speaking of which, since we're taking so many prisoners, we don't want to run out of room. Right now, we barely have enough room to house them, honestly, so we decided to build a prison out of slate. This, of course, making it very hard to escape from, but also slate tile and whatnot is very beautiful, so it should keep the prisoners from having mental breaks themselves. Then, out of nowhere, we ended up having 2 brand new lovers. Burner flirted with Poyard, and it turns out the 2 of them became aroused or something, I don't know, but apparently they love each other. But then this got me thinking, we keep talking about trying to recruit more people, and I know it's going to take a very long time for children to grow up, but I decided to have them, as well as another couple of colonists who are in love, try to have some babies. And even if they're like 3 years old, we could probably slap a musket in their hands, tell them to get out there on the battlefield and die for Uncle Sam and their country. Yeah, I think that'll work. I think that's good. But before we wrap things up this episode, I want to go on the offensive a bit. I feel like we're always playing defense, so I'm going to send our cavalry units out to a Blue Gorge Union hunting site, and we're going to slaughter everyone and take all their work. Shortly after arriving, Kaiser Wilhelm realized that we were outnumbered. There were about 14 or 15 of them, and there were only about 9 of us. But, of course, we do have the upper hand because we have firearms, and we're also on horseback. So quick as lightning, Kaiser and his men began trotting off into the hunting worksite. They were obviously immediately met with hostility, mostly because we started firing our weapons at them. But our motto is shoot shit up and then think about it later, so don't worry about it, baby. The tribespeople began grouping up and trying to chase us down. Luckily, none of them had any animals to mount, so it was hard for them to catch up with us, but their bows and pilas and things like that, some of them having some pretty good range on them, unfortunately, they did end up taking down 1 or 2 of our soldiers. Thankfully though, even with us being outnumbered and a few of our men going down during combat, eventually we had killed enough of them or downed enough of them that they began to run away from their very own hunting site, after which time, of course, we went in to investigate as our other soldiers began tending to our wounded. Unfortunately though, I am sad to say that we didn't find anything too interesting in the hunting work site, as you normally don't, of course, but we did find a massive building full of animal corpses, leathers, pemmican, and things like that, which would be perfect to take back home to feed our people. I mean, let's be honest, we didn't exactly go out to the hunting worksite looking for food, though, did we? We went out looking for a fight. And that's exactly what we found, unfortunately for the Blue Gorge Union, of course, at their own expense. Speaking of which, I suppose it's worth noting we took a few prisoners from the hunting worksite as well to try and help reinforce our ranks. Hello one and all, and welcome back to the RimWorld Continental Army series. How's it hanging? It is I, your rat daddy. It feels ever so good to be back in our Continental Army series. I know you guys have been extremely excited for this series to come back, and as have I, of course. I've been on a teeny tiny bit of a hiatus there, working on some other projects, but I am glad to be back in our American colonies. All 2 of them, because we only have the 2 colonies. Speaking of which, of course, over at New Marsai, I had asked you guys in the last episode to help me name the massive battle that went down, and I decided on one. This comment was left by our good friend Noctis Sombra 3015. I apologize if I mispronounced your name, but you said that we should call it the Battle of Fallen Tortoise, as it basically is named after the first events that kicked off the massive battle, and I totally agree. I think this is an amazing name, so thank you. I went ahead and installed the Days Matter Continued mod to make this holiday, well, into an actual holiday. I have added this mod as well as quite a few others into the mod list, of course, which remember you can always find in the video description. Speaking of new mods, back at our main colony, we began working on some new tricorn hats that are actually added by the Redcoats mod. Up until this point, our tricorn hats have been from the Redcoat Apparel mod, I believe, and it's a teeny tiny bit outdated, and as you can see in this comparison between the 2, the new hats, in my opinion, just look a teeny tiny bit better. And this, for me, is another good example as to why I like to take a little break here and there, especially if we're doing a longer series, because there are some mods that I like, but they're a teeny tiny bit outdated, or there's some better ones that come along, in my opinion, and, I don't really find those unless I'm experimenting with other projects. Speaking of other projects, it would appear that the Bullfrogs have been busy in my absence. The Prussians have spotted a Bullfrog outpost just outside their territory. But not to fear, for the Americans are here. We ended up sending out a battle caravan led by Kanzaki and comprised of some of our normal average soldiers as well as our sharpshooters. However, since they're on foot, it is going to take them quite a while to actually arrive at the outpost, so in the meantime, I'd like to check back in on our wonderful smoke leaf production. As you can see, it is completely booming. We have basically an entire warehouse full of smoke leaves, but we have 390 smoke leaf joints, which will end up making New Marsai a pretty penny. But I've touched on this briefly. The majority of the workforce here in New Marsai is slave labor, and we all know that there's never been a war or anything in American history over slavery, but it does, you know, worry me just a little bit. You see, back at the main colony, things are getting a little heated over such topics, and there is expected to be an abolishment of it very soon. Whether or not new Marsai will comply, I suppose time will only tell. However, that's a topic for the future. For now, we have arrived at the Bullfrog outpost. These filthy commie bullfrogs began scattering all around their base as we opened fire on them. However, I did notice that they were sporting some new technology, new weapons and apparel. Some of them even looked a little bit different too, sporting mandibles and wings and carrying massive metal tubes that fired explosive projectiles. If they had actually been accurate with their firing, this would have worried me quite a bit, and if we had been actually outnumbered, but thankfully there were plenty of us and not too many of them, so we easily took them down. We were able to closely inspect these weapons as well, using some type of toxic explosive as well as just a normal explosive. We would end up taking them back home. We also found some other strange technology the bullfrogs were using to power some type of flameless lamps. It was very odd, so we decided to take one of the metal contraptions back home. The other was too large, so we deconstructed it. We would then immediately set our sights on heading all the way back home with our spoils of war, all the new weapons and technology we had collected, but on the way back home we actually were ambushed by a group of manhunters. Now I know what you're thinking, damn it, a group of man-hunting bullfrogs, and that's what I was thinking, but unfortunately we're both incorrect. It was actually a very large group of man-hunting iguanas, no doubt sent by the bullfrogs. All those reptiles and amphibians are in cahoots. Thankfully, since we had a fairly large caravan, they weren't too difficult to take down. It really helped that the bullfrogs didn't really injure any of the soldiers either. Unfortunately, Jonathan ended up going down to the iguanas, but he would end up being fine in the end, and we ended up defeating them. But finally, with that threat neutralized, we could continue our journey all the way back home. I just want to say as well, even after getting some new parts for my computer, this save in this world is still kind of rough to run sometimes. I guess just because we have so many people and two separate colonies. So it does make traveling on the world map a little slow. Back home though, the president's personal guard was actually helping cut down some blighted pumpkin plants when one of them was slighted by the other and they got into a fist fight right there in the damn field. But then they basically immediately made up right after, so that was nice. And of course shortly thereafter that, our caravan had finally returned home with all the new weapons and technologies and yada yada. I said that a moment ago. I won't insult your intelligence, you already know what all we brought back with us. We went ahead and equipped the two new types of weapons, but we also equipped the old assault rifles that the bullfrogs dropped because we just have so many of them and they're just so powerful. We also decided to do a little bit of testing with this metallic device that we received from the bullfrog outpost. It appears that it generates some type of static, maybe electricity, perhaps? Okay, we all know that's a battery. Kenzaki actually came up with some type of design for a lamp based on the ones that the bullfrogs were using, and it worked. Because of course it worked. Kenzaki's always coming up with these wonderful inventions that are just, well, wonderful for lack of a better word. We really began to wonder though, what were the possibilities of using this electricity? And of course, most likely the most important question is how can we generate more of it for ourselves? Well, that's exactly what Kenzaki set out to find out, and she immediately began researching into electricity. While Kenzaki was looking into her research, we ended up having a new recruit named Ishmael. Now, we've actually had quite a few other recruits being recruited while I've been doing other things like attacking the outpost and stuff like that. A total of 3 new recruits have come along since then. Now, you may see these 3 new recruits and say, oh, wonderful new additions to the army, and I kind of agree, but I also see them as, well, expendable for lack of a better word. And because these 3 strapping new soldiers are expendable, President Henry actually had a secret, top secret even, mission for them. I'm not going to lie though, it was basically a suicide mission though, but the reward, if it was successful and they returned alive, would be immense. For you see, my friends, Allied intelligence has managed to pinpoint exactly which outpost the Bullfrog King is at. He's currently on the move with his royal guard as well as a caravan of soldiers. Unfortunately, the outpost is heavily guarded and it's a bit too close quarters for us to get in to assassinate him, so we're going to have to whip out the big guns if we expect to take him down. We would have sent more soldiers, but due to the weather conditions, only a small group would have been able to travel here in time before he left. And that, of course, is why this mission is so dangerous. We immediately began opening fire on the Bullfrogs and their outpost. We would even use the experimental rocket launcher technology that we received from the other outposts, trying to destroy as many of them as possible. The majority of the soldiers came at us first, meaning we would have to get through them if we wanted to get to the Bullfrog King, but he was no coward. Even he would begin chasing us down along with his men. One of our soldiers unfortunately fell to the frogs, and then we waited to try and fire the rocket to hit the others, and Ishmael fell, and then it was only down to one remaining American soldier. This is where she would make her last stand. I thought for sure she would die to some of their soldiers, but she managed to kill 2 Bullfrog warriors, and she even managed to get to Ishmael's rocket launcher, where she would then fire at the Frog King. Unfortunately, this hardly did anything, and she then succumbed to her wounds, collapsing on the ground before the Frog King came over and killed both of them. The caravan was lost, as was the battle, and the assassination attempt was a bust. We failed. But of course, even in failure, even in darkness, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There will be other chances to take down that damn dirty communist Bullfrog King. And when those opportunities present themselves, we will be there. For the moment though, we do have some more important things to worry about. Due to Kenzaki's research, it would appear that we now have electricity, and we have created a very rudimentary generator that actually burns wood to produce said electricity. Now of course, I know a lot of you didn't really want me to make a huge leap in technology or anything, so worry not. This electricity is only going to be powering some very simple electronics like our water boiler and some lighting. While we're on the topic of water, here in the bathroom in the White House, I think the flooring is very ugly with this wood flooring. I don't even remember why I ended up using wood for the flooring, so I ended up using some of the blocks we had lying around for some beautiful mosaic tile, and I ended up building some pretty little lamps that worked off electricity. Now that seems much more like a bathroom you would see in such an official building. It was during this time as well that 2 of our soldiers were getting married. Hayo proposed a lifelong commitment to Kenzaki, and Kenzaki actually agreed. Now the 2 of them are considered fiancés, and I just couldn't be happier for them, to be honest with you. Back over at New Marsai, we ended up having a slaver caravan arrive, and unfortunately, of course, the good folks over at New Marsai were quite quick to begin trading with them, trading a bit of gold for 2 new slaves. Quite disgustingly, I might add, one of them was even a small tribal child. New Marsai obviously has a different morality and different morals in general, I suppose, than the capital city, and there is quite the difference in culture that is building. At some point, it is very possible that Governor Beardy and President Henry will end up coming to blows over this difference in culture, quote-unquote, and difference in morality and just what they see as right and wrong. But that will be for a later episode. Today, we have done quite a bit, I must say. We've achieved quite a bit in terms of new technology, in terms of weapons. Unfortunately, we did not achieve the assassination of the Frog King, but like I mentioned, there will always be other opportunities, and we will definitely take those when the time is right. Unfortunately, though, my friends, this is currently where we leave our Continental companions. This series is actually from, I think, December or so of 2023, and I never actually completed it. Now, that's not to say that I don't want to. We actually might return to this series if you guys really seem to like it. I didn't really want to waste time going back and finishing up the story here if it didn't seem like anyone would care. So if you do like this series and want to see, I guess, a season 2, I suppose this would be a season 1, be sure to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and of course comment in the comment section to let me know that you would like to see a season 2. Now, it might seem like it'd be a little crazy for me to do that, given that most of these mods are outdated and stuff. I've done worse. I've dealt with worse, setting things up, manually and rebuilding colonies by view and by scratch. We could do it, or we might take the story in a totally different direction, maybe from the Frog King's perspective. We'll see, but that's only going to be if you guys like it. I would like to thank you all for watching this video, though, and supporting this series back when it first came out and through this video. I love you guys, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.